Welcome back to Don't Lift Off. Today I'm going to be speaking to another old friend of mine, a guy called Simon Hill. Now Simon is a former racing driver, motor racing coach, automotive trainer, and as of last year his son Jake just won the British Touring Car Championship. I'm so looking forward to seeing Si today. I haven't seen him for a long time, and we've been for a few scrapes together. He's one of the most charismatic guys I know, always entertaining, and 100% never lifts off. Enjoy the episode. Wow.
Yeah, and I share my birthday, 7th December, with Robert Kubica.
Right.
And John Terry.
Oh, wow.
Those two handsome lads.
Random.
Yeah. Amongst others.
Yeah, I don't know.
And Pearl Harbor.
Oh, what?
Pearl Harbor was on the 7th of December. And the funny story with that, when I think it was my daughter was at school.
How long have you known that?
Right? This actually came up yesterday because my daughter's birthday was yesterday. And we were looking at what famous people that she shares her birthday with, and one of them came up with Andrew Ridgeley from Wham, which I was a massive Wham fan, I didn't realise.
Wow.
And she said also it's National Holocaust Day, and they remember. She said every fucking 27th January they're remembering the Holocaust, and this year was the 80th anniversary. And I said, what's it? So, and mine's Pearl Harbor. And she said, what's Jake's then? Like the storming of the Bastille or something like that. Like, some random historical fact.
Yeah, just look it up what happened on this day.
Yeah, Jake shares his birthday with Niki Lauda, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Niki Lauda, Chris Moyles, fun enough, just talking about that.
Right.
And Bruce Forsyth, all right, my love. 22nd Feb.
Good game.
Whereas mine is with John Terry and various racing drivers. Do you remember that in the 80s, the 90s, the Group 44 Jags, the really cool green...
What, like the silk cut type thing?
No, before that, the green and white ones.
Right.
IMSA cars, basically.
Okay, yeah.
And they were run by a company called Group 44, which is run by a guy called Bob Tullius.
Right.
And he had the same birthday as me. And how I remember this is in Autosport, they always used to put people's birthdays in the back of Autosport. In the 80s and 90s.
Right.
And look, 7th of December, that was the only one I ever would see. I was like, that's a bit shit. I was hoping this... Because Keke Rosberg's the 6th, which is pretty cool.
Right. So that's the day before yours.
Emerson Fittipaldi's the 12th. Susie Stoddard's the 6th as well, Susie Wolfish is now.
Yeah, well, I got a Susie Stoddard as well,
yeah.
actually.
I bumped into her at the airport when I was working for Audi. I was going out to Germany. She was waiting for the same flight as me. I went over and started chatting to her. I said, I don't know if you remember me. When you were doing Formula Renault, I used to commentate. And she just looked at me, and she got real Turkish teeth now. And she went, oh yeah, fuck me, it's Simon, isn't it? And I was like, if anyone was videoing that, because the way she did it, all like she went from being Mrs. Total Wolf to, oh fuck me, to like being one of the lads sort of thing.
That's funny. I was with this job I did last week at Mallory. One of the customers in the car was from, and I can't remember the name, Auburn. Is that Auburn or Auburn?
Auburn.
Right,
yeah.
in
which is where she's from.
Edinburgh. Yeah, she had a family had or has a local garage there.
Yeah.
See, in my mind, I always thought, Amanda said to me that they had a jewellery shop. So maybe that was a bit of Chinese whispers that had gone on there, but I thought it was somewhere in the centre of Edinburgh. But yeah, motorsport background. Right. She was a Fletcher's driver. So PF, that was PF International. I don't know if that means anything to you, karting. Yeah. So I was there like 95, the year that it first opened, and I remember she was a Fletcher's Bakeries, a Paul Fletcher driver.
Random shizzle.
In karting. So, so this is the official start to the podcast. We've started about 10 minutes ago. Right, now I've worked out how to press record on this.
Give me a green light.
A green light was about 10 minutes ago. So
some sort of indication this is not just random waffling. Although it will be for the next hour or so.
Do you know what it reminded me of? Well, I was thinking, one of the things I was thinking of randomly when I was on a run today was... the answer phone message you left me about 15 years ago when you remember this one when I was, hello, it's Anthony Dunn, please leave your message. And you were like, fuck me, son, give it some more showbiz, it's fucking maudlin or something. No.
It was because it was like, oh, I want to go faster. This is actually Dad.
That's right.
And I was like, the last thing I want to do is fucking go faster when I listen to that. And then when you re-recorded it, I said, now you sound like Barry Scott.
Yes.
You went from one extreme
Yes, I did.
to the world's most enthusiastic thing. Yeah, well, I took total credit for that because she was.
It went completely the other way.
I was like, fucking hell, Danny, that's a bit shit. You know?
Yeah, it's like a 1990s Honda engine. It just goes from 0 to 12,000.
Exactly. Yeah. Fantastic.
Fucking hell. But yeah, so there's nothing too official about this or showbiz. It's literally.
I gathered that exactly.
But no, God, yeah, I'm so. But I want to say thank you for coming up and doing it, really, because it's a good old trek for you. But you were in the neighbourhood anyway.
I was, yeah. I'd like to pretend that I came up especially to see you, but I sort of did. No, I was actually visiting the fine people at Ginetta Cars today, so got a lot of happy memories of Ginetta from Jake's career, starting with them in the Ginetta Juniors, and Mike Simpson, I think he's the managing director. I think that's his official title. Who's you probably remember from karting days. I would imagine, right?
Well, there was another Michael Simpson. Who both had the same helmet.
They did, weirdly, like St George flag.
Yes, the red cross across.
Yeah.
So I don't know the northern.
As a proud Englishman, you should know that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Just to point you out on that.
Yeah, there's a Union flag in the back. It's not a Union Jack; it's a Union flag.
Although they've started calling it a Union Jack again, which
really?
In certain media outlets I've seen that, which is a bit strange because I thought I'm with you. I thought we weren't allowed to call it a Union Jack anymore.
Yeah.
Or it was something to do with the Union Jack was the maritime description.
Yeah, correct. So this is what I was told. The Jack it's like the Jack pole.
Oh, right,
and then it's the Union flag on the Jack pole, hence the reason the Union Jack.
So basically, we've all been a bit lazy for 500 years or whatever, of calling it the wrong thing.
To call it the Union Jack.
Standard, really, isn't it? It's the British way.
But yeah, Ginetta, I've sat in Ginetta Juniors. It's 10 minutes down the road from here, and I've never actually been randomly. It's just because I've never had to go, really. I've never, had a.
It's impressive. I had a bit of a tour today, and looking at their, like, for example, their fab shop and the engine department. They're building all their own engines. There's like everything from Ginetta Junior. Did they have Ginetta Junior? No, they said Ginetta GTA engines right up to the big V8 stuff that they've got there, which is pretty impressive. When I was in Dubai recently for the 24 hours, they were in the next garage to the garage that Jake was in. And I can say without any fear of contradiction that the Ginetta was the loudest car there by a country mile.
Really?
It was a V8 with virtually, might as well not bother with an exhaust. It was so incredibly loud. You know, when we all love a noisy racing car, don't we? Let's be honest. It's like kind of, manna from heaven for us. But it was literally like, oh shit, so painfully loud. But, so I would imagine you want to keep your earplugs well and truly, or your earbuds or whatever well and truly in place when you're driving that thing.
It's funny. Do you find you suffer from tinnitus? Or I suppose you weren't. It's not. I suppose the cars that
I'm not Jack Brabham. I'm not that old. For God's sake.
Well, I used to my old mechanic who I saw. He's worked actually. I don't know if you know him. A lad called Gary Kilpack. He worked for AAA for a long time. He's been in touring cars 25 years. He works for Power Maxed now.
Oh, anyway, I'll probably recognise him.
You'll have seen him around the paddock. But I remember he was as deaf as a post in the 1990s when I worked with him.
But you think, all health and safety back in the day was non-existent. So it is literally no surprise that any racing driver from the 60s or 70s is completely deaf because, these most massively powerful, noisy engines and if you were lucky, some cotton wool. That was about it, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, very different. But you think there's always one of the most famous shots from the Senna film is the slow-mo shot from Monaco 88 after he's crashed when he was leading, famously crashed on the exit coming into the tunnel.
Yeah.
And he gets out of the car and he shrugs the marshals aside and he takes his helmet and as he's walking, like quite in, obviously it's in slow-mo, but as he's walking quite almost in shock because he's walking away, you see him take the foam earplugs out and just throw them on the ground. And that was just a weird sort of thing of its time.
Yeah.
And you'd always see those little earplug canisters that they'd have You'd have,
Yeah.
I had some.
Yeah, yeah, we all had some,
racing.
didn't we? Yeah.
I think it was partly because it's a bit of a trend, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm a proper racing driver.
You only stand 21.
I had a Silverstone one at one point. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that was when I was a spectator, actually, when I was a kid.
Yeah, but, so it's funny, isn't it, how little things like that you notice. But
Do you know what's funny about that crash, and this is quite a poignant thing. You remember Cy Durrell? You'd have worked with Cy Durrell. Just thinking about that. So, on the very last day I saw him, we were in the front room, and I think it was I can't remember what Grand Prix was on. It was Grand Prix in the background, and bless him, Simon was struggling to breathe. Really, we'd gone round there and just to I don't know, just to see him, and Joy was there, and I think it was her brother. Now, the name escapes me. I think his name's Jeff, but he was a photographer on that corner where Senna crashed, and he was a Monaco resident at the time.
no way.
So when he crashed, he got a photo and saw where Senna had gone, and he went back to his apartment. You know, there's the fabled story that I heard went back to his apartment. Yeah. So his team had sent a scooter out to go and get him, and when they obviously got there, he wasn't there, and Jeff said, "Oh, he's gone back to his apartment," and he told them where it was because he was living in the same apartment.
How random is that?
That's nuts, isn't it?
This story, this is like the weird things that happen to you sometimes in life. This story is being told to me. Well, my mate's dying alongside, but it's like it just stuck with me. There's like flipping hell, man, all random.
Yeah. What's the chance?
Cross of paths.
Yeah.
So I think he's got a photo of it somewhere of Senna crashing and
my go-to sort of comfort watching, if you like, is that if anyone who's got Sky at home will know that when you go down to the apps bit on Sky, you've obviously got your Netflix and all the other bits and pieces that most people got. You can go onto YouTube, obviously, on there now. So my happy place is I sit there and watch like 70s and 80s and 90s F1 touring cars, Group C, rally, and anything like that. That's if I'm going to bed and I just want to watch something, just have something on in the background. That's what No, I watched. Funny enough, that it was when sometimes it auto plays the next thing on YouTube. So it'll play you'll put on say an 87 or 88 Grand Prix and it'll automatically play the next one.
Yeah.
Just by chance, it was all the BBC comms, so it was in Murray.
Yeah.
And
just his voice is just so comforting, isn't it?
So comforting. But it's also, you realise that, firstly, when you read I can't remember which, I think it might be the most recent book about him, but it talks about how him and Hunt quite often would have like a black and white monitor about 8 inches square, and that was what they're looking at. So he'd get a load of criticism for misidentifying cars.
Right.
And he'd to be fair to him, you try looking at, and there was one example they gave, the French Grand Prix, they put all of the TV commentary were on a makeshift grandstand which had kind of like a bamboo cover over it. So all the sun was streaming down, and then they had this little tiny black and white monitor, and they didn't actually have anything to protect them, so they just had their cans on, and they were commentating that. So the chances of them actually hearing or actually identifying any cars was pretty slim. But the point I was making with that is, you watch it, and firstly, as soon as you hear that voice, it's like, this is.
It's your childhood. It's straight back to your childhood. Yeah.
In terms of, he was such a professional, and he was so incredibly knowledgeable and enthusiastic. He did his homework so well, and he had the ear of everyone in the paddock. Now, having worked as a commentator and as a presenter, I understand that the best, if you say work, sounds terribly pretentious, but the most success I had in terms of getting really good info was because I made a point of getting to know the drivers and the teams that I was commentating on, whatever championship it might have been. And you think of that at Formula One level, how to get then you could directly go to the driver, or you walk in the garage and ask them a question like I could in touring cars or whatever I was commentating on.
Yeah.
Now obviously you have to go through 17 different PR people and get a written appointment to actually ask a question.
Yeah.
But it was just that sense of he really genuinely knew everyone and everything. He'd get all the information.
You could tell that. So I can't remember when this footage was, but I remember seeing him talking with I think it was Michael Schumacher, and I think it was on Murray's retirement actually. And Michael Schumacher put a very decent length personal message to him, and you can tell that he got respect for him. You know, and vice versa. Whereas at the time, because everyone supported Hill at the time, he was demonised, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Schumacher was,
I think the thing with Murray, you always got the impression was he was a fan of everyone. Any Formula One driver, even the most rubbish Formula One driver of all time that you'd see on, we would all take the mickey out of.
Yeah.
But he was like, the Formula One drivers, they're gods to me.
Yeah.
And I respect every single one of them and everyone that's in there. But, and especially the periods mainly that he did. Obviously, he started commentating, I think, on Formula One in the 60s.
Yeah.
When it was very ad hoc, of course. It wasn't regularly until 78 that it was the Grand Prix programme that we all grew up with.
Yeah. It's kind of like Hunt's championship year. That's kind of when it started, wasn't it?
76 was 76. If you listen to the famous commentary of the actual Grand Prix that Hunt, didn't win, he finished third, but when he won the championship in 76, it was Andrew Marriott who did that, because Andrew's written a brilliant book. If you ever get a chance to read that, he's fantastic. His company CSS used to manage both Hunt and Barry Sheen.
Oh, really?
Imagine those two. Calm and easy to control boys.
Nice and easy,
Nice and
easy to keep them out the headlines, no problems.
Exactly. Have we got the girls and the drugs lined up for the boys coming in today? So that sort of stuff. No, that's allegedly, I'm just saying.
I don't think you need to say allegedly.
But Murray, I mean, I am not a bit of, I am a massive anorak when it comes to 70s and 80s F1. So much so that when I try and clear my head, if we all talk about mental health and everything like that, which is good. My way of dealing with anything that's starting to stress me out or really sort of getting on my mind is I think about this is so
this guy's going full fucking Rain Man spec now, isn't it?
Motor racing stats and anorak stats in Formula One all the way from way back up to now, of like who won this and how many, which driver won the most races and all that kind of stuff. So much so now that I'm confident I could tell you the winner of every single Grand Prix in the 70s, from 1970 to 1979.
No way.
Yeah, that's so geeky, isn't it?
No, well, it is. It's funny as you get older. I mean, I might have mentioned this before, but my mum's in a home, bless her. She's got Alzheimer's, dementia. But one of the things they did when they first detected it going was to give her, say, right, do crosswords, do mathematical puzzles, do physical puzzles, everything to try and keep your brain engaged. And doing that is probably quite a good exercise, actually, to be fair. Do you know what? It's really weird because I come up with different things, stats that I know I can, in my head, I can think. This is how random it is. So he goes like, think of 10 Swedish Formula One drivers. No, I'm not asking you to do it now, but no, because I can only think of one. I can only think Ronnie Peterson. That's the only.
But then, when you actually, if you're geeky enough and you start thinking, so it's Ronnie Peterson, Gunnar Nilsson, Marcus Ericsson. There's a guy called Torsten Palmer, who raced in 1975. Bertil Roos, who raced in 1974. Jochen Bonnier, Joe Bonnier, who won BRM's first Grand Prix in 1959.
Wow.
Connie Anderson, who was one of the last drivers of BRM in 1977.
Jesus Christ. You're more of an anorak than I thought you were, actually.
Honestly, it's insane, the level of anorakness that I've got. I could also, here's the other stats one I could do. I could tell you every winner of every driver who's won Le Mans since 1949 to date. Every
Let's do it now, Sally. So since 1949?
1949, yeah.
Really?
Post-war, like who won, so yeah. So it's just, wow. I don't know why, it's something that I've just found always quite good to keep my brain going. I quite like the challenge.
Did you see what's his name? Vettel doing the countback. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. It was very good.
Smashed
but
it out
as
of the
you
ballpark.
can imagine, to me, I'm going, that's nothing. Now tell me who finished second every year, because I can do that one as well.
So Stuart Mosley had a teammate whose name escapes me right now. He raced in Radicals, and he was on the autistic spectrum. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying that, but he could recall, I think, and Stuart would probably correct me on this, it was either the top 6 or the top 8 of every race since like 86.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That is,
and he could recall it. There was just like, proper... Yeah,
I think it's interesting because I think partly here's a really interesting point when you relate this to learning, how we all learn. You know, the one thing that we all have in common in motorsport is that we're all passionate about it. Well, I say all, nearly everybody's passionate about it either the sport, as in like as a fan, the history of it, you know, loving watching certain periods like we just said. And then obviously the actual mechanics of driving, you know, the art of driving. It is an art. I do think it's an art. I do think it's something that you, like an artist, you've got to have to a degree of flair and natural feel for it. We all know we've done a lot of coaching and instructing over the years. And there is a fine line between. No, there's not a fine line. There is a distinct difference between coaching and instructing, isn't there? I've done an awful lot of both, and you know very quickly when you've got someone that's actually got it, you know, got the ability, got the feel, got the flair.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about, you know, I was talking about my own racing, and I was thinking, you know, the amount of times I get compared to Jake, and Jake's infinitely more talented and more successful than I ever was. And as a dad, I'm super proud of that. It's the last thing you'd want is for him to be less talented, because I was just all right. I was an okay racing driver.
I think you were more than okay, actually. That's one of the things. I've heard you say that a few times, and I thought... So I've been on track with you last day we worked together, and I'm sure Renault won't mind us saying this. It was doing passenger rides for you were in the McGann RS, and I was in the Clio. And when I was following you,
2015, that was
2015, yeah.
And
And you requested to stay in the McGann for the whole day, which I was quite happy with. I mean, the Castle Combe feels very fast in a Clio RS, let alone in a McGann RS. Yeah. But no, I was following you around, and I was like, yeah, he's good.
Nice, appreciate that. And I think what's nice is that we all know that there's, you know, yourself and me and quite a few of a lot of our peers that we've all worked together and instructed and in some cases raced against each other, that never got to the heights of being a professional driver or being, you know, in the absolute top team in a top class or whatever it might be. But we all kind of know that he was good and he was good and he was good, you know, and she was good, whoever it might be. And, you know, we all sit there. James Rhodes is one that springs to mind, you know. That
amazing. The fastest painter and decorator in the West.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got to have Ratty in, because what
how much affection everybody's got for that guy as a bloke, because he's just a lovely guy and but mad as a box of frogs.
Yeah.
But anyone, I raced against him in Formula First. He won the championship. That was my first ever full. Wasn't even quite a full season, but majority of full season.
Did you race at the same time as Bryce Saunders was doing?
Yeah, 89. I raced against Brian, Simon Harrison, Tim Stafford. They all did it that year. Jonathan Harmer. There was some good drivers in there that year. I was literally, it was like, you know, transit and trailer, didn't it? Tell you how little I knew, right, when I started that first Formula First, right, was we turned up. And I got this this wonderful selection.
This is not a Formula First, but that kind of
But that's slightly before that. That was my first ever race in 1985. So 40 years ago, this November, is an RF82. Now, in that photo, you'll see me very proudly clutching my brand new GPA crash helmet, which was the thing that the cool racing drivers had back in the day.
Yeah.
Which was a lot.
Is that the same lid there? Is it?
It is. Yeah.
Right,
Gilles Villenueve wore one. And loads of Peroni and mainly the sort of French drivers, because GPO was a French company.
Yeah.
But David Sears used to have Motorsport used to advertise in Autosport, and they had a sale on, and it was literally like the last few of them. And I used to get this cheap. It was like, well, I think it was an early 18th birthday present, because I was 18 in that photo.
Were you really? So you were 18 when you? Were you earlier in Formula First? And what?
Formula First was after that.
Right.
I started. Bit of a gap between my first couple of races I did, and then when I started racing a bit more regularly was about 4 years really. So I did two races in 85, 2 in 86, and then nothing until 89.
Oh really?
Yeah, because I was keen football. I used to play a lot of football, and in 86 I found a sponsor. Finally found a bit of a sponsor. Bloke just loved racing and said, I'll give you a bit of money. And I was going to do Champion of Brands, Formula Ford, which was going to be my first full season. And
wow.
And just before the season started, I did my cruciate ligament. And in those days, they didn't really check you for things like that. They just thought you just sprained, you know, you torn a ligament. And I didn't get diagnosed, and I could hardly walk for the best part of a year.
Oh, really?
Until it sorted itself out, sort of organically, without any real treatment. So the point was I couldn't bend my leg properly to change gear, and I lost the sponsor because he sponsored someone else.
No.
That was that. But
So what happened after that? How did you get into it? Because I kind of know you from the Formula Renault days. That's when your name was kind of when I was reading Autosport.
Yeah, that was 97. So that was when you'd have been doing junior. So we were on similar sort of time frame, but
so you were in Toke at the same time as I was doing
97, we were in the same paddock. Yeah, weird, isn't it?
Well, tell you what, go back a little bit to tell me what got you into motorsport in the first place. I mean, because you had no sort of family that were your family, your mum and dad not interested in it?
No one in the family. My granddad had done some speedway back in the day, I think possibly before the war. I grew up with my grandparents. My mum and dad weren't together. And my mum was still working. She was a professional dancer, so she worked in West End shows. And
I think I might have some pictures of your mum actually that you sent.
So
I'll go through the family album.
She was a bit glam as my mum.
Is that your mum?
That's my nan and granddad.
So
that was my granddad.
Brilliant.
And that dapper young man in that photo was, I think I look about 5 years old in that one there. Look at that haircut. That's fantastic, isn't it? You can see that is literally, that is the generic, what's known as pudding bowl haircut.
Amazing.
Literally stick a pudding bowl over your head and just trim away.
Trim it around. Oh, hang on a second. That's which one is it?
I can't actually see it. I'm trying to stare into the
because
there's lots of photos of lots of
this
people.
podcast has all gone big tongue.
It's got wrong already. So that photo there you've got is me when I was pit reporter for A1GP. So that would have been either 2000.
Hang on. No,
so you've jumped forward a little bit.
Right. Let's get to your dad. Let's see if we can get a grip of it. We'll find a picture of your mum a little bit later.
So basically, my dad, his name was Ronnie Hilton, and his real name was Adrian Hill, but his stage name was Ronnie Hilton because he was a singer, and he had some success in the 50s. He had a number one, I think possibly even 2 or 3 number ones in the 50s and the 60s. But he's best known by people of my generation for a song he did in the 60s, which was a kid's song called A Windmill in Old Amsterdam.
I remember it well.
Which I am now going to attempt to sing the chorus.
Hang on, wait for it. Wait for it. Let's see what we can find.
You're going to go better.
Oh, hang on, wait for it.
Oh man, this is where your level of professionalism is impressing me now.
I remember this as a kid. Feel free to sing along.
He sang every morning, how lucky I am. Living in a windmill in old Amsterdam.
I saw a mouse where there on the stair. Where on the stair, right there, a little mouse with claws on. Well, I declare, going clip, clippity, clop on the stair.
Oh yeah.
Did they did the kids at school used to sing that to you in the playground?
So let me I need to give you a bit of background to this. So my dad was a singer. He was very well known in the 50s and 60s. My mum, there was like a 20-year age gap between my mum and my dad. My dad actually's birthday just would have, this Sunday just gone, he would have been 99. He was born in 1926.
No way.
And he passed away in 2001, so he's been gone nearly 25 years, bless him. Actually, he had Alzheimer's, so I do understand exactly where you're at with your family, because it's a difficult thing. But anyway, going way back, so he was doing his thing in the 60s and 50s, 60s, probably into the 70s. You used to get a lot of big stars doing panto. That's not really changed, and also summer seasons. So they'd go to, like, they'd perform on the end of Brighton Pier or whatever, Blackpool Pier or whatever it was. And they'd have the fairly well-known guys like him, and he was pretty well-known in the 50s especially. And then you'd have, the chorus line of girls in there. And my mum was one of the chorus line of the girls. My dad was the singer, and he was a bit of a naughty boy, bless him. So he was married with kids and that kind of stuff. And then had a bit of what turned out, I subsequently found out, quite a serious affair with my mum, and I was a net result. But unfortunately, those days it wasn't a done thing to be with when you're married. So they went their separate ways.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually meet my dad until I was 18.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
it wasn't until you were racing that you... Because I never knew that. I think you'd said that... I remember you saying your dad was a singer, but I'd never actually realised when he...
So it had nothing to do... Literally, I mean, I knew who he was. My mum had told me who he was, but he had anything to do with us. I had no... we never saw him. I think I met him once when I was very little. I vaguely remember. But he was still with his wife. And it wasn't until my 21st birthday... there was a mutual friend of my mum and dad's who was in London, and I knew him because I'd met him before, and he said, I just wanted to see why you, because I was working in London at the time, and he said, your dad is in London, he'd like to meet you properly. So I met him briefly when I was 18, and then I saw him again when I was 21 because his wife had passed away, so he was now, and he wanted to see my mum.
Right.
So I
suppose it was easier for him at that point then, isn't it?
So I invited him to my 21st birthday party, which was on a riverboat, as was the trend in the 80s.
Right,
It would have been 1987, so 88. No, yeah, 88, something like that. And my mum came along as well, and they got married a year later.
So they got remarried? So they actually got married?
Never were married, so they got married in 89, and they were together
I never
he
knew
died.
that.
Yeah. So the weird thing is that he had no interest in motors, nothing about cars, motor racing, like that. My mum, nothing at all. And going back to where the interest came from, because my mum was on her own, she wanted to continue with her career. She was only 21 when she had me. And so she continued dancing, and she was in a lot of big shows. One of the ones that's quite controversial now, but in the day it was quite popular, was the Black and White Minstrel Show. And she was one of the dancers in that. And
why was that controversial?
So let's just
see if we can get that on YouTube.
Oh, that's good. Let's open that massive old can of worms. Let's see it. But the thing is, just on that subject, I think the whole thing is like, yes, of course, you can see why it's by today's standards, it's offensive, but it was just a different time. And I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I'm just saying it was different. Like we were chatting earlier, you'd hear racist words that are illegal now used all the time on popular television in the 70s and the 80s, and you'd never hear the F word. Now it's the other way around. You hear F word almost at tea time now, and never...
We're literally doing this house actually.
Exactly. So anyway, I was there for my mum, continued working, and I lived with my grandparents from a very young age, like from a toddler until I was 8, and my granddad was the one who was more, he got me like Matchbox cars and dinky cars and corgi cars, and then he got me into all the stereotypical boys' toys, actually the ones that we all still like now, with electrics and model cars and stuff like that. So I loved cars, and I was an avid reader. I'd read about cars and car books and things like that, but not racing. And where the racing bit came along was that we moved from London to Kent. We moved to a little village just outside of Ainsford, which is, if anyone who's ever been to Brands Hatch will know, is if you come out of Brands Hatch and go towards the M25, you go down the hill, there's a roundabout, and there's a turning to Farningham and Ainsford. So it was that village there.
Turning right?
Left if you're coming from Brands.
Oh, right, just that little village that's down in the bottom there. I didn't realise you were that close.
And I can vividly remember being like 7 years old and 8 years old and hearing the cars and the bikes at Brands Hatch. And said to my mum, can I go and watch the cars one day? And that was it. It just something meant I really want to see these things. Obviously, see them on telly and that. It turned out that my mum's, one of her best friends was going out with a racing driver.
Right.
And so she'd spoken to me and said, her boyfriend was racing at Brands Hatch. I'll get some tickets. And off we went. And 20th of April 1975, I've still got the programme.
Right. I'll attempt to be professional because...
It's that one. There you go.
There's your programme.
Silver Jubilee races. And in there were Formula Atlantic, which was very popular, obviously, in the day. And that was what the said driver was in. His name was Valentino Musetti.
Right.
Val Musetti. He was also very famous because he was a stuntman. And if you think of our friends Nicky Faulkner and Andre de Cruz, who've done all this sort of cool driving, he was in The Professionals, The Sweeney, the New Avengers, and even as an episode of the New Avengers, we know Purdy and all that sort of thing. Where Steed, who was the very cool character with the bowler hat, gets in his Jaguar XJ 12C, which is this souped up sort of touring car type Joe, goes around the circuit chasing a Formula 5000 car driven by Val Musetti, who's the baddie in it, and they stop each other.
Going around the circuit. Yeah. That reminds me of that Fun Cup race, when that dude kept in the Polo.
Do you want to know a little fact about that?
Go on.
The kid that was driving it, the kid in the passenger seat, was one of Jake's best mates.
No way.
They had nothing
Were they
to do
local
with it.
then?
Yeah, they were like from the village where we live in Kent.
I suppose to quickly recall, if anyone's watching this, they've got no idea what we're talking about. So there was a Fun Cup race that happened, and randomly this Polo managed to get into the paddock and out onto the circuit as well.
He just literally drove onto the circuit.
It's like you're driving around a race, there's a Polo.
Yeah, and I remember Tom Ingram was in that race. I remember him talking about it.
Really?
Yeah, he was racing in it. And then it was only a long time afterwards that the kid that was driving got done for it.
Yeah.
And it was basically his girlfriend's car.
Yeah.
And he basically said, I'll drive. I think they might have even been to the pub or something like that.
They don't know what I'm going to do yet, do they? That's what he said, because he videoed the whole thing.
Yeah.
Smart move. Nice one, mate.
And then posted it, obviously.
Yeah, of course you can.
And then Jake was like, this boy Zach was the one in the passenger seat. He's like, Zach was there. I'm like, he was a bit of a lad, this kid. So he was like, no shit. It was of all the people it was going to be. But yeah, so he just drove out onto the circuit. And we had an incident at the race school at Brands Hatch when I was instructing there. I was in the race control. We're doing the cushy jobs you used to get at Brands, where the watches, where you'd just be doing timing all the single seaters, so you didn't have to actually get in a car.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the timing on this particular day. And when you come through the tunnel, you'll have done it many times. Normally, in a race or on an event or something, you drive through the tunnel and go down behind the pits. We are sitting there, and suddenly this car appears through the tunnel, and it was a Mercedes, like an SEL Merc, like a 500 SEL. So quite a quick, two-seater Merc, appeared very quickly. We never used to let customers bring their cars down to the back of the pits because it would just get chaotic and crazy and dangerous, too many. So they're parked opposite the pit lane and walked under the tunnel. That was the standard script at Brands Hatch. And this car appears flat out down the back of the pits, and then down the pit lane, out onto the circuit. Same sort of deal. Goes off at paddock, through the gravel, back on again. Keeps going, off at Druids, keeps going. And by now we're like, what do we do?
What the hell?
So they've red flagged the session. Obviously, he's got all the single seaters in, and he's done another couple of laps. And then he gets out of the car. Tim Jones, I don't know if you remember Tim Jones.
Yeah,
Tim was the chief instructor. He's quite a big guy, Tim, and he's gone down there, and this little bloke gets out, little scrappy guys. Come on, who wants a race? Who wants a race? Come on, who wants a race? And he's and he just basically grabbed his keys off him, and then police were called. But yeah, wow. So that was when we then had barriers after that. I don't know if you remember, there was a period where there were barriers when you go through. And
I've seen the barriers, but I've never seen them actually being used.
That's what caused it. Yeah. Right. So that would have been late 90s, I reckon. Early 2000s. Yeah.
I never knew about that.
So going back to the Val Musetti story, so we've gone to Brands Hatch, and I've sat in Val's car, and that was it. Hooked. I fell in love with motorsport there and then, and went to my first Formula One race in '77, race for champions. I used to have non-championship Formula One in the '70s and up to the early '80s, and that was won by James Hunt. And I got James's autograph that day because he was already my hero that day. And I always remember they'd put like the sort of spectator fence in the little barriers, the metal barriers they put up. And everyone was queuing behind that, and he's coming, and I just remember he had a cigarette going, and he was wearing a t-shirt. I've actually seen a photo of him wearing. I only remember it because I've then subsequently seen the photo, and it was like, if you think my girlfriend can fight, you should see her box. Just a t-shirt he had on.
No way.
And he had a pair of flares on and flip-flops. Now, flip-flops, like today, men wearing flip-flops is very common, but back then it was like a real hippie thing. I don't think I'd ever seen it. I was only 9 or whatever at the time, but it's so ingrained in his side. And I just remember he was like, even though he was very quickly doing it, there you are, thank you, yes, thank you, young man, like that. Sort of thing in his terribly posh voice. So he just made a real impression on me of him being the coolest bloke in the world.
Yeah, I mean, he was just like proper rock and roll, wasn't he? I mean, they made the film. The film was great, and that whole story is mega. And you said you got, so I got this one as well. Gilles
Villeneuve, 1980 qualifying, I think that is, for the 80 Austrian Grand Prix, up against the barrier.
I think it's the Joch and Rindt curve or the Ost curve, but it's possibly a single photo that just sums up the level of commitment in the car that was really pretty shit that year. The T5 was.
What's 80? Yeah, 80, that was it was good engine, but
yeah, still had flat 12. I mean, to put it into context, I think his best result all year was a 5th at Monaco.
Right. Yes.
He got caught. Do you remember the famous Derek Daly shunt at Monaco where he cartwheels over the top of everyone at turn 1?
Oh, no, I've never seen that.
So if you go onto YouTube and have a look at Monaco 1980 Derek Daly, and basically as they all funnel into Saint-Devote, he goes over the rear wheels of, I think, his teammate, Jerry, and it literally goes like nose to tail, cartwheeling over everyone.
Oh, really?
Takes out Prost, Giacomelli, and 2 or 3 other cars, including Villeneuve, go up the escape road to miss it.
Right.
So he's dead last.
Right.
And he fought his way through to 5th.
Because, well, in that same race, if my memory serves me correct, from the Gerald Donaldson book, if I remember, I think, so his teammate was the world champion Scheckter, and his teammate, Scheckter, would qualify like 23rd or something. Gilles had qualified quite high.
I think he might not have even qualified, actually. I think it was that bad. But
right.
Because Scheckter was just basically taking the money just to go. He was checked out. He was on the beach, as they say in football terms.
Yeah.
And I think he scored 1 or 2 points all year, but neither of them did. The car was just, for some reason, it was just rubbish, considering it won the World Championship the year before, which is insane. That it's weird, actually, because if you look at, here's my little anorak thing, 78 to 79, the Lotus 79, which was the famous proper ground effects car that Andretti won the championship with in 78, was so dominant. And then in 79, Ligier and Williams especially came out with a better version of it, a stiffer chassis, more efficient aerodynamics, and dominated. And Lotus didn't win a race in 79 as world champions. Either Andretti or Reuter, and they both had like a couple of podiums, and that was it. And then weirdly,
was that halfway through the year, was it, or something? I read something about this year.
So 78 was when pretty much, I think about 4 races in, quite common in the 70s and the 80s that you wouldn't have your new car at the first couple of races. Mainly because the first race was often like in the beginning of January. So it wasn't like it is now where everything's all thought ahead. It's just kind of everyone's got 5 men in a shed that would be building it, and that was like, car's not ready. So 78, it was when the Lotus 79 became the absolute dominant force, and they blitzed the championship. Same car for 79. Originally, they had a Lotus 80 that came out. It just didn't work. It was too clever for its own good. I don't think it was stiff enough from talking to the guys at Lotus that I've spoken to. But then the weird thing is, if you look at the 78 world champions were Lotus and were rubbish, not rubbish, but weren't anywhere near as competitive in 79. And the 79 world champions were Ferrari. And in 80, they were nowhere. And it was the Williams and Brabhams and Ligiers that were the dominant forces. And the early onset of the turbo cars, the first of the competitive Renaults. 79, 80, 81 was when they started being quick. Still weren't reliable enough, but they were super quick, beautiful cars. That picture you've got on your wall there of Gilles Villenueve and René Arnoux from the famous 79 Dijon race.
It's funny. Next time you come here, we'll have to sit down in the cinema room and watch it. So that was one of the things I was watching while I was doing my weights yesterday, was that. And then, have you seen the video with Charles Leclerc driving
Villeneuve's
car at Fiorano?
Yeah.
That's proper good, isn't it? How little grip it's got. The thing is just trying to swap ends all the time.
But also, it highlights that a modern Formula One driver is so completely uncomfortable with a traditional H pattern or dogleg first, all that kind of stuff. He was having to really think about what he was doing. Obviously, he's a great driver, so he dealt with it. He famously raced Lauda's car at Monaco, and shunted it when something broke.
Something break.
Something broke on it. I can't remember.
I saw him shunt it.
Somebody who would know, I can't remember if it was in the historic world that I know through Jake, because Jake obviously does a lot of historic, said something had broken, or they hadn't done something up. Probably it was a mechanical. It definitely wasn't Leclerc's fault. And when you watch it back, you can see there's no way it's his fault. But he was coping with that. And Lacey raced that car as well, and then buzzed the engine.
Well, that's a standard thing to do.
So 75, I went to watch at Brands Hatch. That really sparked the interest, and then throughout the balance of the 70s, I went to as many races as I could persuade my mum to take me to, or my uncle to take me to. I went to the first Grand Prix, 78 British Grand Prix. And 79 Race of Champions was where I'd already then become a massive Gilles Villeneuve fan. And he was entered in the T3, which was the previous year's car. Now, back in those days, the layout of the paddock, what was known as the F1 paddock, which we would just call basically the pits now, was very different. The old pit lane pre-1994 was on 2 levels. So you'd have the garages, and the paddock behind the garages was at a lower level. So if you imagine garages being, for argument's sake, 8 feet off the ground, and then the floor below it behind the garages.
Oh, really?
So the idea was that the trucks would reverse up to them, and then the tail lifts would lift them up, and the cars would go in. That was how it was set out.
Right.
So what that meant was that when you went into the paddock area, you were quite obviously a lot lower than where the garages were, and there was no real security like there is now. And on a test day or even on a qualifying day, you could sort of pretty much get in where you wanted to. And as a mischievous and very enthusiastic little 12-year-old, I managed to get into the paddock area. I wriggled myself under the Ferrari truck and came out the other side, and as I pop out the other side, sitting on a pile of Michelin tyres, eating a bowl of pasta, was none other than Gilles Villenueve.
No way.
So I quickly managed to find my little autograph book and went over to him, and he sort of looked at me slightly mysteriously and said,
how did he get it?
And he was still chomping away on his pasta, and I sort of stood there meekly, and he sort of signalled me over. He said, hold this. I hold the pasta, and he signed the book. He said, what's your name? I said, Simon. I said, to Simon. Blah, blah, blah. And he gave it back, and he gave it back. I looked at him, and I just literally started. I went, I hope you win tomorrow. And he went, so do I, Simon. and then he said something in Italian. And then to a mechanic, and the mechanic came out with 2 Ferrari stickers.
How cool is that?
So that was my Gilles Villeneuve, and he did win.
Oh, did he?
Cool. Yeah, he won the race the next day.
No way.
So that was 79 race champions, yeah.
Wow.
So he actually won 3 races on the bounce in F1. He won 2 Grand Prix. He won the South African and the Long Beach Grand Prix.
Right.
And then the non-championship race of champions.
No way.
Which is pretty cool. So,
That's mega.
So yeah, he was special in every way. I just I cannot accept anything other than if he'd been in a better car, he would have the car that he sadly died in '82. If that had worked out for him that year, I'm convinced he would have been world champion.
Yeah,
he was that good. But anyway.
Yeah, he could win races that other people couldn't win.
Yeah, he was my first Hunt I loved because he was the first racing driver I can really, really identify with as a kid. But Villeneuve was the one that was my first and probably forever absolute hero of all time.
Yeah, yeah.
Just, there's some of the video clips you see, the car control the guy had.
Yeah.
And the stories you read, like about him being 11 seconds quicker than anyone in Watkins Glen in '79 in the rain.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Jacques Lafitte saying he's just different to the rest of us,
Yeah. Do you know, it's funny actually, Si, now you're talking to that, because it's now bringing back some of the books that I was thinking of, back in when I was first getting into karting even, actually, and those stories, from the Donaldson book of, Lafitte saying that, and it's a different type of period, though.
It's really interesting, you talk to people that were around him, and by modern standards, he was a bit of an animal with the car. He was aggressive, but then you read it and he said, well, the reason was because the cars, that was how we made a rubbish car go quickly.
Yeah.
By just basically wringing its neck.
Yeah.
But then even that, you still look at it and go, if he'd just been a little bit calmer here and a bit calmer there, we would have won more races. But
it's the same as Conor McRae, though, isn't it? That's exactly the same as Kev Furby. If he had just wound it back 2%, then he'd have. But he wouldn't have been him.
He wouldn't have been him. And Scheckter said about him, he said he had to be, because he would know better than anyone, obviously, being his teammate. He said he had to be quickest all the time.
All the time.
So even when the tyres were gone and he knew he'd just go flat out, tyres are shit, shagged, and then he'd just get
go off.
Another set
causing that shunt at the British Grand Prix.
Yeah.
That was one of his first races.
Really? I was at that race.
No,
I was on the inside of Cops. I was 14. It was the first time I'd ever been. So we got the train up to
all off into the catch fencing.
Yeah, the train up to Northampton and the bus from Northampton station to Silverstone, as you could in those days. Me and my mate I went to school with, he was into it as well. And then there. And then he lost it in big spin into catch finishing, ripped the car apart, dragged it out of there. Poor old Alan Jones and De Cesaris had nowhere to go. What I actually you forget with that is that De Cesaris obviously was, as he always was a bit hit and miss, but totally not his fault, that shunt.
Yeah.
He literally had nowhere to go, and he was going really well in that race. He qualified well. He was just behind John Watson, who went on to win the race. So
really?
You think about it, there was a chance he could have had a podium in that race, De Cesaris, but yeah, anyway.
It's funny,
I love all those sort of what if theories when you go into it, if that hadn't happened.
Oh, mate, there's a strong argument that Senna would have been 7 times world champion to me. So right,
Somebody
let's walk. Yes, they
Somebody did a
and I was.
t-shirt.
Can you remember me saying in a photo? I used to have that T-shirt.
Yeah.
I sent you that photo. Yeah. Well, let's walk through that then. So which years did he win it? So he won it. Help me out here.
88, 90 and 91.
Yeah.
So he potentially would have won it there for 94 because Damon.
So he didn't win 89 then. So that was Prost, right? Yeah.
That was the famous when they tangled at Suzuka.
Yeah.
And he got disqualified without that. Then finished his championship and made Prost champion.
Yeah.
Because he cut the chicane, that famous one. That was 89. Then obviously in 90 he got his retribution by firing Prost.
Yeah.
Well and truly. And let's not get into the Senna documentary because that still offends me to this moment. A very quick story about the Senna documentary. Dick Bennett, who is Jake's team boss at West Surrey Racing, of course, ran Ayrton Senna in Formula 3 in 1983.
Yeah.
And in the Senna documentary, there's a section on it where he's in Formula 3. And the actor that plays him is basically, he looks and sounds like Bob Hoskins, like a little bald cockney, basically. And Dick Bennett is a tall, quite suave Kiwi. And there's no doubt when you hear him talk that he's a Kiwi. But I said, did they not research? He said, they were supposed to come and interview. They couldn't be fucking bothered. So it's that. And then Ralph Furman, who was the boss of Van Diemen, was a little stocky, short, bespectacled cockney, and he looks like Rodney Trotter. He looks nothing like him. It's not even close.
With the backdrops of the mountains of Norfolk.
It's insane.
When you said the Senna documentary, I thought you meant what's his name? Is it Yusuf Kapadia? So that one actually is a good
apologise, and I apologise. I should.
It's the Netflix one, which I haven't. I watched it. I was like, no, I can't, and then. Jess sent me, you should watch this, and it probably is pretty good actually.
This is how I put a point of reference. If that documentary was made about another sport, we'd probably really enjoy it because of the way it's been told, other than the fact that it's very badly dubbed and things like that. Because if you don't know, if you're not a motorsport fan, you wouldn't know that Snetterton isn't mountainous, and you wouldn't know that Ralph Furman looks like that and Dick Bennett's like that. We know because we're motorsport fans, because we know where that's got geeky level of, But actually, and I said to my wife, I said, "What do you think?" She said, "It's all right. It's quite interesting, and it's it tells the story in a different way, and you see certain things you didn't know." So it's impossible, and it's not really hard. It's impossible to not watch it from a motorsport fan's point of view.
Once and
not feel like it's fingers down a chalkboard.
Well, this is what the whole argument of the drive to survive, because it's bringing in a different type of audience, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just a new audience, and it's a different demographic, and they're growing the sport, and I don't know. That's my take, and I know the purist take is it's bringing in the wrong type of audience, but
define the right type of audience. At the end of the day,
exactly. Audience is audience.
Every sport has a wide demographic, and for any sport, Formula One or football or whatever it might, for it to survive, it needs to be passed down to different generations. And how it's done now is we live in a digital world, so it's done via Netflix. Getting behind the scenes and by social media and by access to things that just simply wasn't there. If you think about it, going back to my and yours, I'm sure, early years of being a Formula One fan first and then a motorsport fan generically, was you'd get maybe a 30 to a 40-minute highlights of each Grand Prix on a Sunday night at about 9:30.
Yeah.
That was your Formula One. No qualifying, no other sessions. That was it.
Yeah.
They might briefly talk about qualifying or show an incident at the beginning of the show in the edit.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it was just an edited version. Very few interviews, maybe like one or two interviews. And then that was your Formula One fix from like late 70s through to the sort of mid-80s. And it gradually started to get better.
Yeah.
I remember World of Sport and Grandstand would show things like touring cars and F3, and then World of Sport, especially on ITV, would show brief highlights of the Indy 500 or Bathurst, or but my favourite, and going back to my comfort thing on YouTube, rallying voiced by Dickie Davis as the commentator on World of Sport.
Yeah.
He was just insanely good at it.
Yeah,
like, you watch it back.
Yeah.
Again, having done it and myself as a commentator and having done voiceovers, what he does is of its time, but it's so brilliant. But so you think there was that. Then you'd just get Autosport Motor News, maybe Motorsport magazine, and that would be your fix in terms of getting in for news. That's why Autosport and Motor News are so maligned now, because it was so important for you every Thursday excitedly go and get it and read all of the news.
You would,
because that's the only way you got the news.
Yeah.
Or you go and watch races, and that's all you did. And you know, I know I sound like the world's most Gen X bloke ever, but that's what it was. You know, that's how. And I was such an avid reader. I read so many books and magazines on motorsport. That's where now I think I've got such a good grasp of that period, because I was so obsessed with it. It was my, you know, I had, without getting off track too much, I had quite a tough time.
I don't think we've been on any track.
No,
never, have we?
Yeah, story of my career. I was off the track more than that most of the time. Go back to your earlier point about my standard. But my mum, after she stopped dancing, was she married a guy who became my stepdad. And it was not a nice place to be. It was a very hard place. It was a very unhappy household, and quite an aggressive household. Not violent, but verbally violent, but not physically violent. And he was very controlling. And it was a really unhappy period from my sort of like early teenage years to when they divorced when I was about 16, 17. And so my happy place was reading my books and reading my magazines. And so that's probably why it's even more important to me. It was more important to me because it literally was my, you know, I'd just go off into my own little world.
It's funny how that creates that. So if you look back, it's funny, I'm wearing an Oasis t-shirt. If you look back at where Noel Gallagher really crystallised his talent, or maybe diamond his talent, or whatever the phrase is, but basically he was in a similar sort of household and retired to his bedroom and just noodled on the guitar, noodled, and that's. Yeah.
I think if you are lucky enough to find something that you're passionate about, and I see it, you know, we were speaking earlier about our respective kids and you know, and what they're interested in, what they're passionate. The thing that makes me the happiest with Jake, for example, is not that obviously it's fantastic the success he's now had, but it's the fact that he was so passionate about it. He wanted to do it so much, and it was something he loved doing. Not I wanted him to do it. When he actually started, the funniest story is that a friend of mine, Mark Marchant, you might remember Mark used to do Formula Ford back in the day. We were champion brands together. He ran a team called Scholartech, kart team, and he used to run a track called Bayford Meadows, sitting board, and he was running like a little kart school in the summer holidays, and. At no point had me or my wife or anyone had said to Jake, "Do you want to go karting? Do you want to have a go?" He'd never even been on a holiday, you know, like just wasn't his thing. Just wasn't. He was quite a cautious kid. He wasn't timid, but he was. No, I don't really want to try that. He was one of those sort of kids. And then out of nowhere, he's just like, "Can I go and have a go in the kart?" And we sort of, me and my wife looked at each other like, "Okay, right. So let's see how you get on." So I rang Mark up. Off we go. We drive to the circuit. As we're driving into the gate, he's getting his bottom lips going. And he's like, "I don't want to do it."
Really? What sort of age was he?
7.
Right.
Yeah. I think there might even be a photo.
Let's see if I can scroll through 15.
Don't know. But anyway,
so let's go through it.
So he was.
God. We'll come back to those.
He was sitting in the car and basically just started getting really upset. And I said, "Look, don't worry about it. We'll go and see Mark and just watch the karts for a bit, and then we'll have a cup of tea or something and go back." And I'm like, part of me is thinking I dodged a bullet here. You know?
Yeah.
And part of me is a bit disappointed because I really did want to see how we get on with it, you know, just out of interest, see whether he liked it or not.
Yeah.
Because as we know, you know, with your daughter doing it, for example, if they like it and they enjoy it, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
If they're good at it, it's a bonus. But if they like it and they enjoy it, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I maybe need to adjust my expectations on that.
So let's go back to that point and just quickly on this one. So he then didn't really want to do it. So eventually the compromise was, can I get him to just have a go in a car park, just drive it around the car park? Which he did. And honestly, I could have run quicker. He was just very, very steady.
Yeah.
And then there was a little kind of, almost like a little oval kiddies track, and he said, "Well, can I go on there?" So he goes on there, and then all I'm watching for, and you'll relate to this having done it with your own kids, or certainly with Scarlett, can he do one pedal at a time?
Yeah.
two pedals together or the wrong one?
Yeah.
And can he actually steer?
Yeah.
And he could do those things. So I'm Mike, honest, and this is absolutely from the heart. It wasn't, I want him to be brilliant, I just don't want him to be shit.
Yeah.
That's all I was thinking.
Yeah.
And he went a bit quicker, and then by the end, he went on the main track, and he was driving around pretty much on the racing line, pretty much getting his apexes.
Yeah.
Again, not like, oh my God, look at this, like this is, the second coming of Senna or whatever. But,
Yeah.
but looked okay.
Yeah.
And it was from then that he wanted to do more. Unfortunately, Mark then moved to the States fairly soon after that. So he ended up, Jake only did, I think, half a dozen cadet races. And that was it. And that was his cadet karting career over, 6 races. And then he started again when he was 13 and did another 10 races in Minimax, all at Bayford Meadows.
Yeah.
And that's it. That was his karting career. So,
Well, that's what. So, I first met Jack, and I think I put this on Facebook when he won the championship. It would have been when I was about 14, and I don't think he was actually doing anything then. It was kind of to me, he was in his skateboard. He was in his skateboard mode.
Yeah.
So that would have been when he was like 13, 14.
12, 13, something like that. Yeah.
And then you introduced me, and it was kind of, what these really into skateboards. Cool. That sounds good. That doesn't sound
cheaper. He was. He nearly broke his arm a couple of times. He did all the kids. I was quite proud of his kind of Gen X attitude that he had. Like, let's just go and shunt and have fun and do fall off bikes and fall off skateboards and jump off things and that sort of. That's what.
Back to the Jordan Peterson thing. Don't interrupt kids while they're skateboarding.
Yeah,
it's a skill that they're learning.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And so that was interesting how that sort of just came out of nowhere. Really, there was genuinely no push from me or from anyone else.
It has to be driven by them.
And that was the one thing we've got in common. It was both. I wanted to see motorsport and be involved in it. I wanted to go racing. And it was my mum and my stepdad. They ran a pub, and so this is a sign of the times. I used to work behind the bar when I was 14 or 15.
Brilliant.
And the best thing was it was a coppers pub as well. So the local coppers would be in there. I'd be serving them and regularly have lock-ins and stuff like that. And I'd be there at sort of on a school night at like 11:30, 12. There'd be all these pissed coppers in there. But also there was a bunch of regulars that I'd get to know, and they all knew about my passion for racing. One of them was Mike Quaife, as in Quaife Gearboxes, because they were based in Tunbridge. Mike and Sue Quaife.
Is that Phil's dad?
Phil's dad, yeah.
Right.
And he was rallycrossing in a Vauxhall Chevette at the time. And the pub that we were running, or that my parents were running, was called the Vauxhall Inn. It's still there in Tunbridge. And at one point he did what I could only describe as basically like a PR stunt, brought the car down to the Vauxhall in a Vauxhall Chevette and did skids around the car park in his rallycross car, which is the coolest thing I'd ever seen. As you can imagine. There's a massive big car park at the back, and he's like, I'm giving it the full sideways. And a couple of times I got to go and help out with the Quaife rallycross team. Everyone, you would have a converted coach in a kind of Italian job type way as their transporter. And I remember going down, and they didn't have enough passes, so I had to sit in the boot of the car while he got me in so I could go and help out. And and then a few other people in there. And it was through those people that not so much Mike, but some of the other regulars, I cajoled into that picture you showed earlier of me in the Formula Ford.
Yeah.
To put in a few £100 in for me to do my first couple of Formula Ford races.
Do your first few Formula Ford races.
I did. Here's a little sign of the times, kids. So I rented that car from a guy called Martin Vial. His team was called Strata Racing. It was based quite local to Brands, and I remember it was £550 plus the entry fee, which was about £20 at the time, for a race.
For a weekend?
Just because it wasn't a weekend in those days. It was 10 minutes qualifying and a 10-lap race. That was your Champion of Brands event.
Good God.
And that was it. An RF82. I remember I spun at Druids in my first race. I'd never even tested. No ARD license.
Straight into the race.
Straight into the race.
No way.
I didn't qualify last, which there must have been some pretty shit drivers in it if I didn't qualify last. There was such a big entry. I had a qualifying race, so I think I qualified about 12th or something out of 20 in a qualifying race. So some of them must have been proper shit, mustn't they? And so actually a good friend of mine who you probably know, Julian Westwood.
Yeah.
He was doing Formula 4 properly. That was the end of his first full season.
Yeah.
And he was in that race in the qualifying race because his car broke down in qualifying.
Oh, right.
So he qualified way down. He would have been near the front of the main race otherwise. And I just remember him. He was behind me, and I was just like, by the time I got a paddock, I could hardly see him. He'd gone.
Yeah, and off and away.
But
well, I remember that the first Vauxhall Junior races I did, like in '96. I was expecting, because I was like, God's gift to karting. So I thought, I was winning races in karting and fighting for national championships. Went into Vauxhall Junior, and I'm 2.2 seconds off the Class A pace when I'm expecting to be on Class A pace in a Class B car. But it just messes with your head. But I don't suppose your expectations were really set at that point.
Because I'd never ever, I think I'd only ever driven a go-kart a couple of times on holiday. So I'd never raced one once.
Yeah.
Other than, like I say, holiday sort of stuff. And so I had nothing. I didn't have any, no coaching. And, not like today. It literally was, I'd watched videos and read books. And then they plumped me in a car and went, this is basically what you do. And off I went. That was it. And think about it in context today. No arts tests. It was only the fact that I'd actually done my homework that I knew what the flags meant. I couldn't really heel and toe because I didn't really know what it was. Didn't understand what it was or how it did. So the guy actually had to teach me what it was. And I sort of worked it out as I was going.
Yeah.
I did 2 races that year and then 2 the following year. And then, as I said, I hurt my leg, so I couldn't drive for a while. And then came back in '89, which is when I managed to find a sponsor to get me started in Formula First.
To do Formula First. And then, so how did the Formula Renault stuff come about? So you raced for Menu Motorsport, did you?
Yeah. That is the car, 97.
What chassis is that?
Miguel. So it was when it was still multi-chassis then. So So Tatis had come on the scene the year before with David Cook and won the championship.
Correct.
And then Manor got the cars in '97. A few teams had them in '97, but Miguel Menu basically had what was quite a good car in '96. Duncan Verco had run it in '96, and I think was second or third in the championship behind David Cook.
Yeah.
And so the assumption was that this sort of copy of a Tatus in Miguel should have been pretty quick, but it just wasn't. David Henderson is my teammate. He was very quick. Yes. I remember hearing his name. It was at Thruxton. I just remember him. Yeah, he was on the podium at Thruxton. He was very, very quick there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'd only ever done like Champion of Brands and things like that. So I just really desperately wanted to do like a proper season in single seaters.
Yeah.
I think I was 29, 30 by then, so I was way too old for it really. But I wanted to do it to learn because I wanted to do sports cars.
Yeah.
I wanted to get my technical knowledge up. That's what I thought was a good way of doing that.
Yeah.
I had no manager or anything. It was just me trying to wing it, basically.
Yeah.
And how I got a sponsor is quite remarkable, really. So Brands Hatch Racing School, you do something called an initial trial back in those days. So as a customer, you turn up, have a briefing, you go into what was by then, I think we had 3 Series BMWs as the school cars. You drive first, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, and do 3 laps, come in, we'd then give you a little form going, this is well done, and then we drive 1 steady lap and 1.5 steady laps and 1.5 quick ones, and then give them the form and they go off and have a briefing and drive a single seater. So this guy gets in the car with me and we start chatting away, and it turns out he's like really, really passionate about the idea of what he said. One day I'd love to race at Le Mans. I'm like, really? He said, we just got chat. I said, that's one of my ambitions as well. I'd love to do Le Mans. And then we sort of talked, and he said, what are you racing? I said, well, I'm not really at the moment. I haven't got any money. And he's like, well, what do you want to race? And I said, well, I'd love to do some single-seater stuff.
Yeah.
It was coming up to the festival time. And he gave me his card, and I rang him, and he said, that festival you're doing, when is it? I told him. He said, let me know how much it is. I'll sponsor you for it. So he sponsored me to do the festival in a Kent car with Gavin Wills Racing as a Swift 96. Good car.
Yeah.
And I ended up winning my heat, winning my semi, starting on the front row of the final. Which in the Formula 4 Festival as well. So it was still, there was the Kent and the Z-Tech Championship.
Okay.
Mark Webber actually won the Z-Tech Festival that year.
Yeah.
In the Van Diemen. And I was on the front row, and the car felt a bit, I won my semi-final with the 23rd slowest lap out of 26 cars.
Oh, really?
The car it just felt so slow, and I couldn't work out why. Couldn't see anything obvious, and then went into the final, and the car was even slower, and it turned out the distributor cap had cracked. Oh. So it was just down power, basically. It was misfiring a little bit, but they hadn't picked up another. I don't think I would have won the festival, because I think Mark Marchant won, it was too strong, but I think it would have been on the podium.
Yeah.
Which for me would have been a hell of a
So, like, how competitive was it?
Yeah, exactly. There's God knows how many cars in it. But I just remember Matt James from Motor News, if you ask him about this, he's one of the best best defensive drivers he'd ever seen, because I was so slow, but I was so late on the brakes everywhere. It's like, even the guys that finished second and third, like, Jesus Christ, in the paddock. It was like, didn't think you were going to brake. I'm like, the only way I could keep the lead was just by You know, it goes into the dip, and I
Yeah.
was braking up as it took off again. Then I'd brake and throw it in, and I think they were all convinced I was just going to lob it off on my own. They all just sort of waited for the shot. It never came, and I just hung on in there to the end. So, but then he's basically sponsored me for Formula Renault,
Right.
helped a little bit in Spiders, but unfortunately in the Formula Renault year. I didn't have any control over the payments that were going into the team.
Okay.
And it turned out, in hindsight, that the team were basically charging him for stuff from my teammate's car, which he found out about. And then he said, I'm not doing it. I think motorsport's full of crooks. Because he'd already said, I will sponsor you to go to Le Mans.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
So, shame that one. But it was.
And then, so was that did you go straight into Spiders after that? Because obviously I knew you went from Spiders.
That's 98, so that's the following year. So that's in the Mardi Gras car. My teammate is in the background. Or two of my teammates are in the background there. One is in the similarly liveried blue and white car is Tobia Mazzini. Who was very good. A little link with him now is that he's very good friends with Gary Isles, who I work with closely,
really?
and he lives he's from a town called San Gimignano in Tuscany.
Right.
And his parents run a hotel there, and Gary and his wife Tracy are just buying a house out there. So
No way.
a little link with Toby.
Wow.
And behind Toby is some guy called Andy Prio in the red car, who started off with a different team at the start of that year and then joined Mardi Gras, or Mardi Gras ran his car from sort of 4 or 5 races in, and we had some really good scraps actually. I always remember one of my, I guess it's the only thing I can take as my kind of, I won't even call it claim to fame, but I was very proud of in hindsight when Andy went on to be multiple world champion, etc. Was that I think in the races we did together, I think we did something like 8 or 9 races together, and he beat me 5-4. So it wasn't a rout. It was, but the following year, famously, he won every race in '99.
That's right. Yeah, he did a mega job that year.
And unfortunately, I started with the car behind me, the white car, Nicky Hart. Nicky did that year, and then he should have won the championship that year. He got fired off by Jamie Hunter, God rest his soul, at the last round, and then Jamie got disqualified from the championship for it.
Right.
Because had he not done that, Nick would have won the championship, and ended up with Dan Eves winning the championship in '98.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, so
and Greg Caton was doing his data.
He was. No, Greg Caton was running in one of the other cars run by.
He did that. I know, he did the data for Bryce actually. When was it when Bryce did it?
'97. He did Bryce today.
He
raced
there you
himself in '98.
Yeah, right.
Saw Greg recently actually because of the historic stuff that he runs. A lot of historic cars.
He does. Yeah.
GCAT.
GCAT. Is it still GCAT? Yeah.
Anyway, so the white car behind is Nick Hart, who's a good mate of mine, very very quick racing driver, and he. At the end of the year, he stopped. He was like selling it all, don't want to do it anymore. And Renault owned the car. They were short on numbers, and they actually loaned us the car for the first few races. And I was second in the championship after 4 rounds behind Andy, and then we just ran out of money basically. And I came back and did the last 2.
Right.
I actually started on the front row of the last ever Spider race with Andy. Andy was on pole. I was second.
That was Silverstone?
Yeah.
With the famous Coley race.
That's it. That's the one I was in. I went off as well in that one. Yeah.
Right.
I always remember. Bryce Wilson, you mentioned, he was 97 champion. He was friends with Tolbar Racing that I was driving for.
Yeah.
And Bryce was test driver for Nissan that year.
Yes. Yeah.
Cars. And he knew Silverstone very well. And he's like, I've been out and looked at it. It slicks. And I'm like, it's a bit much. I look at Prio's on wets. I'm like, trust me, it slicks. I went out, and it was no way, but it slicks. It was definitely not what it slicks. So I'm slithering around and fell off in the end, basically trying to get my tyres warm.
Right, is that so? You were on slicks?
Yeah.
Is that what Coley was on? Slicks. He went off into Ireland, and
multiple times we all went off basically. But it was great. Those cars were great fun to drive, and really enjoyed it. So '98, I did all bar I think 2 races because I had a shunt. I couldn't pay for it. That was.
Is that Formula Renault? Is it?
That is at Spiders actually. That's 98.
Oh, it's Spiders, is it?
I got on the podium in about 3 or 4 times that year, and I think that's at Brands in '98.
Is that a Homer Simpson?
It's Jake's drinks bottle. I stolen for the day.
Amazing.
It's not like now where you have these like personalised drinks bottles. That's Jake's Bart Simpson one that I've got there with a winner's laurel around my neck. So that dates it, doesn't it? So kids, there's one of you with a winner's laurel over there.
When did they stop? I thought they still did it.
They still do it in historics, funnily enough. A good day.
I thought they still did it in modern stuff.
No, not anymore.
When
do you know
did
why
they
they
stop
stopped it? Do you know the official reason why they stopped it?
No.
Because it covered up the sponsors' logos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's why they stopped it in F1 and then they stopped it in
I
other
suppose
sports.
it does,
When you think
doesn't
about
it?
it makes sense.
Yeah, they just
But
cover
yeah,
it with Black Lives Matter t-shirts instead.
I'll tell you a funny little story about the trophy there. So I did, as I said, I was a decent racing driver, not a brilliant one, not a rubbish one. I was okay. And we recently had a new shed put in at home, and Tina's brother is a builder, put it in for us. And I found a box full of trophies, and there's almost, and they were, bless them, they were all bent and knackered and everything. And there was Jake's massive collection of trophies in there, and he sort of was looking at these forlorn things. I was like, "Is that it, Dad? Is that all you've got?"
Mangly old plastic.
Looking at these wonderful, like, Silverstone Classic winners, Spa, British touring car. He's got 59 podiums in touring cars out.
Really?
Like,
Wow, good God.
Which is pretty cool. 20 wins and 59 podiums.
Yeah, but his old man held his own, and that's one of the things I wanted to kind of,
and that's,
say from the...
Yeah, that's Mike Flounders from Tollbar Racing, who ran me in the last couple of rounds. That's Brands 98, and then they did the last round, 99, sorry, and then the last round at the Silverstone as well. And then he then ran Jake in Jeanette Juniors in 08 for his first winter series, and 09 and 10, and then also in G50s and 55s. So he was massively influential on Jake in terms of understanding how to set a car up.
Yeah.
He was so particular about setting a car up that the car would go on the flat patch at the end of the day, and he literally had Jake sitting in it, and they'd cook dinner in the awning, and he'd be sitting there for like 3 or 4 hours at a time, where he got everything to within like a pound everywhere around on the corner weights. He was old school, really old school, and really knew his stuff, and he was a good guy, really good guy. Well, I say he is a good guy, but he did a fantastic job of bringing Jake on, so always be very grateful to Mike.
Yeah, I think you need those old school guys. Funny enough, with Tollbar, the guys that ran me in Bark Renault in '98, when we were in a 2-year-old car and Nick Dudfield was in a 1-year-old car, because we were in a Martini, another French car. Yeah, it's actually a bloody good car.
Yeah, that race would have raced. So that was a '97 car, was it?
Yeah, I was 96. Ours was in 98. It was a 96 car.
96 car. I think Frio raced that. 96 Martini. I'm pretty
correct.
Yeah, and then 97 is a guy called Leighton Walker. So I was teammates. He ran with Andy Cox Racing, Leighton, and his dad Roger. Remember his dad Roger with the motorhome? Vaguely, yeah.
So they were kind of teammates. So he used to have his engines rebuilt at Andy with Andy Cox, and he used to do Junior Britain at the same time as like Danny Weldon and Jensen Button and Anthony Davison and all those guys. So I knew Leighton pretty well from those days, because he did Junior before. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was a bit of a nutcase. He was a nutcase. He was into boxing and stuff. Do you know what? I'd like to see what happened to him actually.
There's a few of them. You just wonder. They're either going to be like absolutely super mega successful or complete bums. There's no middle ground.
There's nothing
like
in between. That's like matey crashing Tommy Byrne, isn't it?
Yeah, Tommy Byrne. What a great film. That film is one of the best films.
It's great.
Isn't it? Yeah, I love that film.
Yeah.
So this photo we've got up now is from 2000. So this remarkably now dawns on me that this was my last ever full season 25 years ago. In a Lotus Sport Elise. Ultra-Bytel Lotus Sport Elise Championship.
Yeah.
And interestingly, my engineer for some of the races, because I used to switch engineers because they were all run in-house by Lotus, like a bit like Palm Rowdy.
Yeah.
Was John Danby, who now runs John Danby Racing.
No way.
Jake does a lot of his historic stuff.
I've worked quite a bit for John.
And and Chris Dinage, who was the Lotus Motorsport manager, previously was in his early days was one of Senna's mechanics and De Angelis and people like that in the F1 team, and all the way through to the end of Lotus as a proper F1 team at the end of '94. He then was a manager on that, and now he runs Classic Team Lotus. And I went up there recently and saw him about possibly doing some transport work for him through Bespoke. So
nice. I've done a little bit of work for Lotus myself, and going across that classic unit is insane, mega, isn't it? See the Mansell, the Essex car that's
still one of the most underrated liveries. You know, when people do the greatest liveries of all time, and it's always Golf, Martini, JPS. They're the three. Like the goats, aren't they? Really?
Yeah.
But their Essex livery, like chrome with the blue and the brilliant livery, that real kind of like 70s Essex typeface.
I think it's probably because it didn't have a long period. Maybe I don't really know.
But you know what I didn't realise, and it's only when you look into it that at the same time, not only were they sponsoring Lotus in F1, but they sponsored Penske at Indy, because when Andretti raced at Indy in 1881, it had Essex livery, same livery,
right?
And they sponsored the factory Porsche team.
Did they?
In I think 79 and 80.
Yeah.
in the 936s as it was then. And that's pretty cool. I mean, if of all the boxes to tick, there was actually a feature in, I think it was in Motorsport News recently about, crazy sponsors and launches and things like that. I mean, the guy was a massive crook. He was up to all kinds of embezzlement and stuff like that. But
in motorsport?
Never.
No.
It's a great book actually called Speed. I can't remember what it's called. I'll think of it in a minute. But basically, it's a book about all the stories of all the various different crimes that have been committed through motorsport.
Yes.
By people and to people as well.
Yeah. Oh God. You'll have to tell me the name of that because someone else told me the name of that the other day.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it in a minute. I've got a photo of it somewhere. But anyway, let's carry on. Where were we? What we were talking about? We've gone off at a tangent.
Funny enough. Oh yeah, we were talking about Lotus Essex and the last full season of racing.
So that was my last full season. I did okay. I had a pole at Brands, and this one I put on specially for you, Danny. This was actually me and Jason Plato were having a conversation about the things that we remembered, and it was the fact that those were the coolest race boots, the Diodora boots that for a period in the 90s were the go-tos. They were super comfy, and they were. I actually tried them on, and I've forgotten just how tight they were. Because you had them really tight, obviously in those days.
Yeah.
But a lot of people used to wear those, and famously Senna wore them back in the day. Not that actual pair, just to be clear. I'm not claiming any claims. Well, I used to jokingly say I got three things in common with Ayrton Senna. Well, I'm 5'8", left-handed, and I've got fireproof socks. That was about it.
Amazing.
So there you go. But so that's what the significance of the Diodora race boots were. But
they're not the moccasins he was wearing when he drove the NSX. So that
with the white socks and the chinos. Yeah. So
on the gas.
There's a great video I saw the other day of him testing, because I used to go to Brands in the 80s when they used to have a Goodyear tyre test, which is always a couple of weeks before either the British Grand Prix or the European Grand Prix, whatever was on. And in 86, I went there for the British Grand Prix one, and some video of him famously blipping the throttle. And the thing I remember about that is I'm a big collector of Autocourse, the yearbook, that comes out every year. Just actually got this year's one, funnily enough.
Are they still doing that?
Yeah, it's been going since 1950. Now I've managed to get my collection all the way back to 1966, 67. So
really? It's a yearly thing, though, yearly annual, right?
Originally, it was really just Formula One with a little bit of info at the back about maybe Le Mans and F2 and World Rally or whatever it was, or the equivalent in the 50s, 60s. So it's really just very limited. It was mainly F1. And as the years have gone on, it's now become F1 plus World Endurance, Indy cars, touring cars, Formula E, all of the major motorsports in the back as well. Right. But anyway, so go back. The 85 book I took to Brands Hatch for the test day to see if I could get it signed by some drivers. And I first got it signed by Stefan Johansson and Martin Brundle, and then the pièce de resistance is I was standing outside the Lotus tent, and there he was sitting there having his lunch, and I patiently stood there, a bit like the Villeneuve story. He opened the book, and they always do a top 10. So the editor ranks the end of, in this case, the end of 85. Number 1, Alain Prost. Number 2, Ayrton Senna. Number 3, Nigel Mansell, I think it was, or Kekiros, but I can't remember. So Senna opens a book, and I hand him the pen, and then he starts reading what they've written about it.
Right.
So he starts reading it, and he's sort of going, like that, sort of, reading it with a... And he sort of looks, so he signs the book. I've still got it signed by it. It's just one of my prized possessions. And and then he sort of looks at me and went, "What do you think? Do you think I should be number 1?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he went, "So do I. Next year." Shuts the book, gives it back to it. And I told Dick Bennett's the story, because obviously he was, very close to it. And he said, "Yeah, that sounds like it. That's the sort of he'd do. He would have read about it.
Read it all.
Because he always wanted. He was very.
That's what makes the difference.
He was very aware of good, bad, and indifferent that the press said about him, because there were certain journalists that he had a beef with, and once he got beef with them, that was it.
Do you know what? It's occurred to me, actually, having not seen you for a long time, having seen Jake and his career, it's very clear, and I don't know whether you're aware of this, but it's very clear that you've instilled that in Jake.
Really?
Now, I don't know whether that's a hereditary thing, or whether that's your passion for it comes through. I don't know Jake particularly well. I've worked with him on quite a few jobs, and
It's weird, isn't it? You're working with your mate's kid. And
yeah.
Really makes you feel old.
It was mainly at a freezing cold. We were both at a freezing cold Blighton in the passenger seat of a Ginetta.
Yeah, Ginetta stuff, yeah.
But no, it's very clear when you talk about his passion for scale electric cars and radio control cars and the history for the sport. And I suppose let's before I say what I'm going to say, I'm building it up. Get fearful. That's not the story of my life unless it involves a shunt. Tell us about how you got Nick Day.
Nick Day,
What is that? It's a random photo.
So I was commentating at Le Mans for Eurosport in 2009, and Nick and Craig Dupre. You remember Craig?
Yeah.
They both
have lots of discussions with Craig on Facebook, mainly about Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, bless him. Exactly. Began in a minute. So we went to Le Mans. Now, we've been doing a lot of events for Peugeot.
Yeah.
Peugeot won Le Mans that year. And
that was the diesel car, right?
Diesel car.
That was a stealth fighter, car, wasn't it? Oh,
David Brabham, Marc Genet, Alex Wirtz won the race in 2009. So that's actually taken in Peugeot's hospitality after the race.
Right.
Now, if you look at the photo, you'll see that I've got accreditation around my neck and a Eurosport shirt on because I was commentating for Eurosport. One of my proudest achievements as a commentator was twice I commentated on Le Mans. With Martin Haven and Jeremy Shaw and guys like that, which was a real special experience for me.
Yeah, mega.
So they came out with me, and we all stayed at a little chateau together and had that kind of vibe going on. And then the funny thing about this is that the girl that was in charge of all of the events for Peugeot randomly was in charge of the Peugeot's hospitality reception. And so we said when the race finished, is there any chance? And she said, yeah, come on in. So we go in there enjoying all the free food and drink. And then the coolest thing happened. So they had these posters in there that they were giving to people, and some of them had been signed. The Peugeot drivers started coming, all of the Peugeot drivers. So it was like Nicolas Manassier and Gilles Villeneuve, all these guys that had driven for them. And whilst I was in there, whilst this was happening, I'd been watching on my phone, was it on my phone or was it on my laptop? On my laptop, on TSL. At the same time, Jake was racing in Ginetta Juniors at Croft and won his first ever race.
Yeah, I remember him winning at Croft,
so I'm jumping up and down.
Yeah.
And one of the guests can think that we're celebrating Peugeot's win that had happened an hour earlier. We're like, they only just realised we've won. And like, no, just don't get it. So as the drivers come in, I had this post. I said, my son's just won his first race. Do you think you could sign this? So they all started signing it to Jake, blah, 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 blah. And then all the Audi drivers came in and they signed the other side. So Alan McNish, Tom Christensen, Dindo Capella. Jake's still got this poster.
Yeah.
One day you'll be here. One day he'll be here. All this kind of stuff. And he's like, that was such a special thing. But
and that's going to be happening.
That will happen. I'm convinced it will. That would be
it's just unbelievable,
thing.
Isn't it? Let's go through a few of the family shots. So
this is on my wedding day in Barbados in 2001 with my amazing wife Tina. That's her there. She's got the best laugh in the whole wide world. And that's us on holiday a couple of years ago on a freezing cold night. But we've been together since 1988, and she's put up with an untold amount of shit. A lunatic husband. And she's helped me through my darkest, most difficult times. I lost my dad, I lost my mum, and she's been an absolute rock and the best mother that anyone could ever wish to have for both the kids. Absolutely adore her. She's been going through a real tough time of it with her health recently. And I'm very, very lucky because, I don't deserve her. But if there is such a thing as somebody being sent down to look after you, then she's my little angel. And my little Tina, I love her with all my heart. I'm very, very, very lucky to have her.
It's funny when you see. We'll sit through these. I'm so glad you sent me that. That's an amazing photo. But just so hopefully Jake will see this podcast and see that his dad's got that onto YouTube.
Yeah. So there's a better one. We're moving swiftly on. So this one is
Gav Piper's touring car. Is that touring car?
Gav Piper touring car. So this is Rockingham 2003. And a couple of little things there. So Gav's still a good mate. Actually, he rang me.
I went to Sorry to interject. I went to look at a house up in, oh God, where was it? It was in sort of Catterick direction. I went into the house and started speaking to the lad, and he said, "Oh, my brother did racing." He said, "What's his name?" Gavin. So what's your surname? Piper. It's his brother's house.
Gav's brother.
Yeah,
How random.
Random, yeah.
So Gav was a good mate. He was running in an Astra that year, run by GA Racing, Gary Isles Racing.
Yeah.
Which is obviously Gary is who I work with now.
Yeah.
Bespoke handling.
Yeah.
So that was little 9-year-old Jake, or 9-year-old Jake there. The cap he's wearing is a cap that was given to him by a guy from Bayford Meadows, Ian, which was a Jeff Gordon cap.
Cool.
Because he just won the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
And fast forward to when Jake started in touring cars, he runs number 24. And he wanted to run 22 because that's his birthday, 22nd.
Yeah.
But the reason we went for 24 was, one, because he was a big Jeff Gordon fan.
Right.
Famously, that was his number in NASCAR, 24.
Yeah.
And the other one was, I'm a massive Hesketh fan. And obviously Hesketh, James Hunt ran 24 and the Hesketh.
Oh, did he?
75, yeah.
No way.
And then at Spa this year, the 6 hours, Jake got to drive James Hunt's Hesketh.
No way.
He drove the 74 car.
No way. How cool is that? That was a John Barnard car, wasn't it? Was it that year? Was it Barnard? Was that later?
No, Barnard was he was early 80s. He designed the first McLaren carbon fibre car in 81.
Yeah.
And then was onwards and upwards from there. But
who was it then? Was
that Harvey Postlethwaite.
Postlethwaite, that was it. I knew it was a well-known designer.
Yeah, so Harvey Postlethwaite, that was his first sort of successful car, was the 74, 75 car.
Right.
And then he obviously went on to success elsewhere with Ferrari and Tyrrell and people like that. The super cool Lacey Tyrrell, that was Harvey Postlethwaite.
Yes.
19, I think it was, the white and blue one, where famously passed and repassed Senna.
Phoenix, yeah.
How that man never won more races, I do not know. It's so cool. One race, it's nuts, isn't it?
Number 27.
Yeah. Again, that number. I mean, if that Lotus Elise thing, if you quickly go back to that, you'll see. That's why I was number 27.
Wow.
So that's the only time I ever raced with 27, but that was really special to have done at least one season with that.
Yeah, nice man.
On the car, yeah. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, so Gav was a fantastic driver. Shame he just couldn't get the budgets couldn't continue. But that was standing next to Gary's touring car was quite ironic that little 9-year-old Jake is now, it's cheap. So that's this is on the grid.
We're fast forwarding a long way forward, though. I suppose. Go on.
So we're talking family, and so this is my daughter Ellie. So that's my daughter Ellie, who was 22 yesterday. She was Adam Morgan's grid girl a few times. Quite a funny story with that. When she was asked to do a bit of grid girling, they said, you can put you on one of the cars, and instantly Jake went, not my fucking car, because he thought it would be weird having his sister as his grid girl, which I totally get. but yeah, so that's a lovely little story about her doing grid girl. She did it in Alton Park in 2023, and she was Adam's grid girl again, and Jake had an okay start to the year, but hadn't at that point won a race. This was now round 5 of the championship. And at Alton, they tried something on the car. It was the dominant year that Napa had last, 23 rather. Started on the front row, won the first race, won the second race, finished second in the third race, got 3 fastest laps, scored the most amount of points that anyone scored all year. In fact, him and Sutton scored the most amount of points. 62 points is out of a possible 67, which is insane when you think about it. But this is the cool bit. So he does that, wins 2 races, and then has a brilliant weekend. Ellie is Adam's grid girl. Adam gets drawn on pole for the reverse grid for the last race. So I said at one point, both my kids have been on pole today.
Amazing.
And the best bit is then afterwards, we're on the podium because it was Father's Day. And Jake said to me, he said, I haven't got you anything, Dad. He said, but you can have this, and gave me the winner's trophy. So I got the winner's trophy from... I said, he basically said, I'm really shit. I forgot Father's Day. I forgot to get you a present. Oh, he said,
but I've seen your trophies and they're even shitter.
Yeah, but they're really shit, so have one of mine. So actually got it in the living room with some mementos of things like all of the passes from Goodwood. You know, when they have the drivers' club thing there, so he gets given obviously when he's racing at Goodwood, and some of the little like members meeting things, and just bits and pieces that are just nice mementos to have. So one of the things I did this year for Christmas for him is I got one of those apps where you can download, you can print all your photos. I printed 150 photos from the year of racing and other things. And
6x4 actual prints,
like we used to get.
Nick does the same.
And I made a scrapbook for the year for him. Gave it to, and I also cut out all the Autosports.
Absolutely priceless. Because everything's going digital, isn't it? But
do you know what? It was one of the nicest experiences sitting there. It probably took me like a day and a bit to do, just literally cutting everything and gluing it in. And like arts and crafts. But when you then look through it and you're like, what amazing things and there's pictures of obvious racing ones, but there's all the mechanics and the crew, and then there's the ones of him in historics, and there's pictures of him with his little boy, and there's all these kind of different things. So it's just really nice. Yeah.
One of the things when I said this, and I say it now, that the thing that most occurred to me, that's out of context. My God.
No, that's with dog Goldie. She's great. And you can see I'm a big dog person. I love my dog. That is 1983 with my best mate Kev on holiday in Spain. That was, I said I never did any kind. That was the first and probably only time I remember having that. Now look at this fashion statement here as a 16-year-old, right? So we've got the highlighted hair, clearly, obviously.
Full on wham.
A full on wham, big wham fan. Cap sleeve t-shirt. I mean, admittedly, you know, look, got a bit of tan.
Looking good, got the guns out there, mate.
In those days, it was, you know, I was very sport. And the piss pot crash helmet. And I think that may even be, does that look like a sweatband? I might be rocking as well. I think it could be a wristband, and some sort of baggy jeans of such like, we were rocking there. Kev actually is still to this day is one of my best mates. He actually works in the automotive industry all of his life. He works for Audi now, and he was for a while he did some training and stuff. So we'd probably Kevin Garrity. Probably
Kevin. Oh right, I didn't know you knew him for that long.
That's Kev Garrity.
No way. He's got hair. Sorry.
Context, listeners and viewers. Kevin has got a what I would describe as an aerodynamic haircut now. So there you go.
Talking of old school boys. Oh my goodness.
There you go. So this is an instructors reunion. If you look very carefully, you'll see Miles Kerwin immediately behind me, Richard Ollie, David Germain. I think that's Bill Solis at the back there, and Carl Jones, Chris Pullman.
Jonesy,
shut up your dick.
Shut up, dick. I've been asking Jonesy to come on this podcast for about 6 months now. Tell him. Look into that camera. Tell him,
Jonesy. Get your stupid Welsh arse down here and get on with it.
Dick.
He's a legend. Such a talented driver. I went round with him in the wet once in a school car at Brands, and I just sat there like literally just, you know, just such good car control.
It's good. Amazing. Quiet generally until he gets to know you, and then
he's very quiet. I mean, he used to get, you know, his friends Jack and Stella would wake him up a little bit, you know. But I think he's a bit like me now. He's a reformed man in that respect.
Every time I pick up the phone to him, he's like, how you doing? Oh, I'm sweeping fucking leaves.
He's got such old man mode, isn't he? That's a bit of a reading there.
So we just went off on a tangent again.
And that's me and Gaz again. And
so that's now your boss.
Yeah, he is now my boss. It was a night out. The random one is, so the guys behind is Mel on the left and Ollie on the right, the young lad, and they are basically. Ollie is now one of Jake's best mates, and they both race historics, and they live in the village near us. And me and Gary were walking into this pub in Tunbridge Wells. Gary lived in Tunbridge Wells at the time to go out for a couple of drinks. And Ollie had borrowed his dad's Ferrari, and he'd got a 458, and we were taking the piss out of him as he put out a gun. It's your dad's car. And he was like, yeah, it is actually. So we then got chatting to him all, and weirdly, since then, him and Jake have become really good mates. So I actually met him before he did. It's so strange, yeah. But there you go, yeah. So
proper old school.
Yeah, lovely. Matt Acton, great photo from my mate Matt of a big hug after Jake won at Silverstone in 22 in the Rocket sponsored car. Stealth car, completely black. Same. Fast forward a year, that was in 23. I think that was the win at Alton Park I was telling you about.
When he just took his first win, because how long were you knocking on the door for?
So he did his weight. He did his first full season in 16 with Team Hard, and then 17 again, and 18 did half a year, and then stopped halfway through because the car was terrible, the team were rubbish, and it was just an awful year. I mean, there was just so many things that weren't right. So he stopped halfway through, and then got a lifeline with Sean Hollenby and the dear departed Dan Kirby. Dan's no longer with us, sadly, of Trade Price Cars, and they ran the Audis in 19. And he actually won a race at Ayrton, a reverse grid race, but he was battling with Matt Neal. And then as they went into Old Hall, Matt got past him, went a bit wide. Jake cut back, and in cutting back, he clipped the back of Matt's car and spun him.
Ah, right.
Caused chaos.
Right.
Carried on, won the race, and
Wow.
then got pinged afterwards. So he didn't actually get to keep going.
I see,
But then
I see.
a little bit later, about 2-3 races later, reverse grid at Knockhill and led from start to finish. And that was his first win. So so that was 19.
Sorry, what year was it?
19.
19.
Yeah.
How did you feel when he'd won that race? Because this is a degree of, always with father and they have a son or a daughter or whatever, you kind of live it and you're wanting them, you so desperately want them to do well. What was their emotions like?
I think for me, I've always, going back to, we were saying about as coaches and instructors, occasionally you'll sit with someone and instantly you go, wow, this person is very good. And I saw that with him from the beginning, and I had to get other people to sit with him as well. So
that wasn't in the go-kart track the first time around. So this is like fast forward into Ginettas,
So he tested when he was doing Ginettas and things like that, and Phil Glue coached him a little bit, and he was like, yeah, he's right. He was lapping at the same sort of time as Gluey, and Gluey was won the Clios that year. Very good driver, Gluey, obviously. And that was then I thought, actually, I think we've got something. So it was really, to answer your question about how I feel, it was like, it was kind of, I told you that he was good. It's not just me thinking it.
Yeah.
He's just gone out and won a touring car race in a fairly average car. The car had really done nothing before, and he drove beautifully in that race. And then he got stronger. 20, they had a better car, and he had a really good. You should have won some more races that year, but we had mechanical problems. And then 21, 22, 23, 24, it's just got better every year. If you look at it if you looked at it from a statistics point of view, and we all have a statistic when it comes to motorsport.
You were the one that told me on a training session that 70% of statistics are made up. I remember you. But go on, tell me the statistic anyway.
Well, Simon Harrison, you used to always say, he said, this car's great, it's 10% better than the old one.
Yeah, 10%.
Everything's 10% better than the old one.
Good rule of thumb.
Good rule of thumb.
Sorry.
No one's ever going to question that.
Tell us your stat.
The stat was, so if you go from like sort of 2020 when he got with MB Motorsport as his started, he finished 7th in the championship. In 21 he finished 5th. In 22 finished 3rd. In 23 finished 3rd again, but with more wins. And in 24 he won the championship.
That's amazing, isn't it? It's amazingly consistent how that.
Yeah. So he went like 20 he had 6 podiums. 21 he had 9 podiums. 22 he had 13 podiums. 23 he had 13 podiums. 24 he had 16 podiums. And he went 2 wins, 3 wins, 6 wins, 8 wins in that same period. So if you're looking at it, we all have our favourites. Anybody listening to this is a fan of Sutton or Ingram or Turkish or whatever, absolutely justified. They're all fantastic drivers. Sadly, I think motorsport's got a bit like football, and it's a bit tribal now. If you like one, you tend to really dislike the other, which I could never do. As a racing fan, I loved a bit like Murray Walker. Just racing drivers are all my heroes.
Yeah,
there's no way I might have some I like more than others, but they're all mega as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, the point I was making is that the critics, if you like, were saying, Sutton's better or Ingram's better or Turkin's better. Yeah, absolutely fine. I get all that. Statistically, they won more races, won more championships. But all you can do is improve. Focus on yourself. You can't do anything about anyone else.
Yeah.
So to go 7, 5, 3, 3, 1.
Yeah.
2 wins, 3 wins, 6 wins, 8 wins.
Yeah.
More podiums, more wins, more points, and get better in terms of less mistakes, more focus, more consistent.
Yeah.
More, averages, and also in simple terms, in the last 3 years at BMW, he's finished ahead of all of his teammates, including obviously Colin Turkington.
Yeah.
Who's a 4 times champion. So,
yeah.
At the start...
That's quite something to do that.
Yeah, Colin Turkington is one of the best touring car drivers, if not the best of his generation. And of course, he's 42 now, not 22 or 32. So everyone knows that you are going to naturally not quite have the same. I'm not, if anyone's listening to this is a fan of Collins or a friend of Collins or whatever, huge respect and affection for the guy. He's a brilliant guy. Jake simply wouldn't have won a championship without his support at the last round. So that alone, but just generally, he's a great guy. His family, his wife Louise is amazing. His kids are amazing. I've got a lot of time for them as a family. But the point I was going to make is that. If you were sitting there at the start of 2022 when he joined BMW, Jake joined BMW alongside Mr. BMW, Colin Turkington, you said, in the next 3 years, that's what's going to happen. People have gone, Colin will beat Jake over that period, at least once or twice. Yeah. And I hope I'm not jinxing myself. I hope this year we can still continue that trend. But the point is, it shows you how he's continued to improve. Yeah, how he's matured, how he's flourished. Better. Yeah. In a very, very competitive period of the championship, where the cars are unbelievably close. You look at the qualifying times, and some places the top 6 or 7 are covered by hundredths. Yeah. Which never used to be the case. Tell us about again. This is not a kind of Jake Hill podcast, but you obviously been involved in the dad role. The dad coach role. Is that what you see your role? What do you see it as a kind of the coaching? Very, very, very small amount at the beginning. Sorry, I don't mean. I mean a kind of manager is what I'm looking for. Really. I think when you define manager, if you think of it, my idea of a manager is someone who does. Negotiates all the deals, and sorts out everything and makes sure that you get the best deal for whoever it is you're managing. Let's use it in motorsport context, like go out and negotiate the contracts, get the best, get them paid the most money if they're professional drivers, or get the deal as cheap as you can get it if it's a paid drive, or get the best drive that you can get them. And so for me, it wasn't the only thing I can say is that I think of it more as a coordinator than a manager, in the sense that I would go out and find the money. I would go out and find anything from a few £100 to a few grand, or a can of fuel, or a pair of boots, or whatever it might be that I had to try and find a way of getting. We didn't genuinely, and that sounds like it's a real sob story, we just didn't have any family money or personal money to put in. It just wasn't there. So the only way we were going to do it, and I said to Jake from the beginning, the only way we do it is if we can find ways of getting money somehow, finding people to support you. And I was very fortunate, people like John Miskin. I was going to say, got involved quite early on. When did John first start getting involved in 2010, so Jake's first full season in juniors. So how that came about is, remember these shots we had of me at Le Mans with Peugeot? Yes. So I was asked to go and host a load of guests at a rally in Scotland, funny enough, the Scottish Rally, who'd have thought, which the Chris Meek was competing in for Peugeot in the IRC, as it was, an Intercontinental Rally Challenge, which is basically a better version of the European Championship, in a 207 car. He won the championship that year in 09. And I had to go and look after guests there and show them, go on the stages with them and watch the rally with them and chat to them about it, which ironically, because I'm not a rally guy by heart, but I've got a passion for it, I love it, knew enough. Ended up sitting next to, in a dinner that evening, a guy called David Manchester, who owned or was dealer principal of a group of Peugeot Citroën dealers. And I was telling them about what Jake was doing, and he was telling me about his own, because he did quite a bit of rallying himself. And he said, I need to introduce you to this guy that I know. He's been involved in motorsport his whole life. He's massively passionate about it. He used to be involved with Mark Blundell, and all sorts of different people. Is that where the Blundell thing came? No, that's not. That was completely random. So then he introduced me to John. And John came and watched Jake race at Rockingham, and was a bit like looking down his nose. And then Jake went out and absolutely smoked everyone in the second race. And he was like, okay, and then he sort of stepped in and got involved. He's been involved in some way, shape or form ever since. At least 3 of our biggest sponsors have been through John, been through him introducing us to them and finding them. So he's been, and also he's become an unbelievably close friend, a big supporter of me personally when I've really struggled, because it's been tough over the years in terms of keeping my head in the game, as it were, without either giving up or losing the plot or jumping off a bridge or whatever it might have been, because all of those were options at some point when things were really, really tough. But for some reason, stuck at it, and here we are. So, you know, but John was massively important to that, as were a number of guys. Me and Jake started to make a list after we won the championship of people that we need to thank, and we ran over 350, 370 people that had either sponsored him or helped in some other way. And I think that's probably a conservative estimate. I reckon it's over 500 people or organisations that have done something to make it happen. But I had to do the same with my race. I had to go out and find.
You had to find it. Well, that's why when I see, oh my God, what's this? Is this
this is in 19 qualifying at Alton Park. It was the Audi that he was racing had no ventilation in it, and it was like 33, 34 degrees.
Right.
And he ended up with heat, like some sort of heat stroke or heat exhaustion. He got out of the car and nearly collapsed.
Yeah.
So we put him in the paddling pools that they get. So we stuck him in a paddling pool.
Oh, yeah. I saw that had become a thing.
and then that was me just sitting with him, because he was on the verge of passing out. So it was just me. Just being dad, basically.
Yeah.
Actually, won an award for my acting that photo, because it's just.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, because it's
mega.
It's pretty obvious what's happening. You know, it's dad looking after
his son.
And then it's not anything about racing. It's about just caring because you care, because you love your kids. You know, just being over the top. I think ITV get a lot of value out of me jumping around and screaming and shouting like a lunatic. This is one of my favourite photos. Is
that the end of the year?
Immediately after he just won the championship, and they'd just done the podium ceremony.
That is a great photo.
And it was like, excuse my language, but thank fuck for that. That was exactly, I was like, fucking can't believe it, we've done it.
Yeah.
And, it was just the whole... I tell you very quickly, on the whole year, I believed from the beginning of the year, this is our year. I just knew it. Joking aside, we used to put this hashtag 24 in 24, because his car number 24 in 24. I wouldn't be swayed. You know, when they talk about people having a single focus, and you visualise, and you have this technique that a lot of sports people use about. But I could only ever see him standing on the podium at the end of the year lifting the championship trophy. I would not let anything.
Yeah, and everything went back from that.
And I literally every single day, more or less every day, all over last year, all I was thinking about was that. It was overtook my whole mindset.
Yeah.
And it was like the day of the race. You know, Mark Johnston, I think you know Mark Johnston.
Yeah.
So Mark came and helped me out and look after some guests. He stayed at my house on the Saturday night, and we got in the car, put some music on. I got this playlist of all these songs that were
the season finale playlist.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what was on that playlist?
Well, it was
Genesis.
It was all these like sort of 80s feel good songs. It was like Eye of the Tiger and things like that. You know. But the one song that was on there, this is quite a funny story. It was quite a sweet story actually. My mum was a massive fan of Olivia Newton-John.
Right.
And as I said, my mum passed away in 2013. But so she never actually saw Jake race a touring car, which was a shame, because she absolutely adored watching him race. And the 2 days before Brands, I got in the car and turned, and the radio was, my wife had been driving the car, and it was on like Heart, Magic, whatever it was from the 80s. And this song comes on by Olivia Newton-John called Magic, and the lyrics are all about you got to believe we are magic. Nothing can stand in your way. And I remember the song from my mum. And the weird thing is then on the Friday, we were in hospitality having dinner on the Friday night, and I was like, something smells really strong of garlic. And they went, oh yeah, it's lasagna. It's got too much garlic in it. My mum would always cook lasagna with too much garlic in it. And that song came on. Then I saw that. And I'm like,
the stars are aligning. Yeah.
And then the final bit is, the first two races were dry and Brands. Jake wins the first one, Ingram wins the second one. There's 1 point in it going into the last race. And we needed a bit of luck, because Ingram's car was quicker than ours in the dry.
Well, actually, I do, if I can actually work my magic here, I do have, hang on, it's on here. Go away from there.
Go back
I saw a mouse.
I saw a mouse. Nothing wrong with that.
Here we go. So, talk. This is like Yeah.
15 laps stand between us and the 2024 champion, and knowing who that is going to be. The Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit has had some epic showdowns The 2024 Quick Fit British Touring Car Championship final round is ready to go. Lights are red. We're racing for the final.
So it's the first damp race
Of the day.
of the day.
Yeah, so it'd been dry for the first two. So the first part here is Ingram finds a gap down the inside. Jake was trying to get around the outside of Colin, and Ingram gets past him. And in hindsight, it turned out that Ingram had just gone too high on pressure. So this is the move. Around the outside.
What a move. And Ingram still fights back the next corner, doesn't he? You can see Jake covering it off.
And then they get into each other. He gets another place. And then Cook gets sideways. He gets another place. But our car was just hooked up. And Ingram, it would appear that they just got the setup wrong. I think the pressures were too high. You could hear the understeer in Ingram's car at one point. And then Jake the car was on rails and he drove it beautifully, and he had a big moment here at one point where he just gone in a bit quick.
I do remember that. That's then, isn't it? Yeah.
And this is when Josh gets a bit of a wobble on.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't going to try and pass Josh, but he just didn't.
He didn't need to. He just needed to stay ahead of.
He just needed to be in front of Ingram.
Ingram,
you only had to be one place in front of him if you wanted.
Yeah.
But obviously, you want to give yourself a bit of a gap. And then basically the race just came to him. Something was too quick, but didn't really matter, you know.
Yeah.
The 2024 Quick Fit British Touring Car Champion, Jake Hill. He crosses the line second in the race. The championship is his, and it is going to be a very emotional Jake Hill, a very emotional team as well. Craig Corley, his engineer, is in floods of tears. Jake Hill, I think, can hardly believe it. We've had some very emotional in-laps in the past, and there is another one coming up right now. It's a day release, if you like, of all the emotional seasons release as well.
And the thing is, I knew how much that would mean to you. When I saw it, you can see how much it means to Jake. And how much it means to you. So coming up from a family, and that's why I sent you the. Oh, what the fuck! I'm crying. That's why I sent you the message. It's like, you know, you've come from a place and without a pot to piss in. I suppose to a certain degree, you've been in a little bit in the shadow of your old man a lot of your life.
Well, I mean, as I said, I wasn't close to him really. I you know, when the years that I did know him, I got on ever so well with him, and he was lovely. But it was never. I didn't have a dad really in the traditional sense, and it's just what you know. If you don't know any different, you know. As I said, my mum then remarried and I had a stepdad. It was not a nice situation. My granddad was my real dad. What was the really sad thing was that he brought me up from a young age until I was 8, and then sadly died of a heart attack when I was 8. And I now know how much that traumatised me, you know, in hindsight. Because in later life I had some issues. I had some issues with, you know, addictions and things like that, which is kind of traced back to problems in the younger life. It happens to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, you know, thank God and touch wood, I don't drink alcohol anymore. I don't do anything I shouldn't do anymore. Well, I don't think so. I don't know I'm perfect, but that was all part of the journey, you know. And, you know. But then there were times when I got sponsorship because I was sitting there at 3 a.m. drinking vodka because that was the only thing I could do was focus on that. But,
to get you through it. And, well, this is this is when you see, and I saw I was watching it in my uncle's motorhome in Upper Hayford, and I said just watch this a minute because this is special. This means something. And it's not just another championship win. This is a kid that's grafted and grafted, and a family that's grafted and grafted, and kind of all. That's what I wanted to say to you is like you can see how much it means to you and how much it means to the family, and that's what I'm saying. Like I think there'll be a lot of people that watch that and said, you know, I mean, Jade Edwards, Paul O'Neill, Tim Harvey is like talking about Jake used to be his wheel washer, touring car champion Tim Harvey that you'd have watched on TV. He's like...
Yeah, worked with Tim, worked with Paul, over the years, Jade, we were all friends and everything. But, I think, as you say, people who know our journey and our story has been not a straightforward one. It's been a lot of, I think the word I would use is just persistence.
Yeah.
Just inability.
Keep knocking on that door.
There's a lovely video the other day with, oh God, brain's gone. Actor who played Hannibal Lecter, Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
And they said, "What's the best advice you give someone?" He said, "Just don't give up." He said, "Doesn't matter what it is, just don't give up."
Yeah.
And you stop and think about it, and you think, define don't give up. Then it could be anything. Could be this. Could be just life generally.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
Because if you keep going, if as soon as, in my opinion, people talk about, I couldn't get the money, I couldn't do this, and like, no, neither could I. But I couldn't. That didn't compute to me. It was like, I can't get the money, so I have to find the money somehow. I have to find someone. And sometimes it was the most. One story is that we had a situation when he was in Ginetta G50s. We were at Donington, and we tested on old tyres because we couldn't get any new tyres, even nowhere because everyone else was putting new tyres on. But the car was good on old tyres, so I went to see Mitchell and said, "Look, I haven't got the money for the tyres, but if we can get the money, can we?" Even if I get it last minute. And they said, okay, we'll mount some tyres, but if the car even turns, like goes anywhere on these new tyres, you've got to pay for them, and you're not going out until you've paid for them. So it was a bit. So we're now the morning. I've managed to persuade a friend of mine to help me out, and he said, I'll buy a set of tyres for you. And then that was like at 5 o'clock on the Friday, and then we're qualifying quite early on the Saturday morning. I'm ringing him, won't answer the phone, and then he texts me, goes, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So dropped me in the shit, like, after he said he would. Now, okay, I probably cajoled him a bit, so probably my own fault. But anyway, so now I'm like sitting there, the car's on the jack, qualifying's about to start, and I'm like, dude, that's it, we're not going out. There's literally no point in doing it without a new set of tyres. And there was a company called MMC, who were Motorsport Insurance Company at the time. This is in 2011. And the two guys, just purely by chance, the two guys that were the directors there had sponsored him a little bit at the first round down at Brands, and then we're doing the second round at Donington, and they're on their way up on the Saturday morning, and I was ringing everyone I could think of, couldn't get hold of it, and they answered the phone, and I said, "You coming to Donington?" Like, "Yeah, can you get us in?" Like, "Yeah." And they said, "What time's he out?" And I'm like, "He's literally just about starting out." And I told them the story, and I went, "Right, make a note of this credit card and go to Michelin." So I'm now running across the paddock to find the guy from Michelin. Took the payment, couldn't get it to go through. Qualifying is now starting, and they've gone, and then it's finally gone through. They've literally let the car off the jacks. It's gone out. By the time I've got down to the pit lane, he'd done 3 laps and he was on pole, and then he won the race the next day.
Fucking hell.
So that was just what it was.
Not a wing and a prayer.
That's the sort of thing, winging it right to the max. And it was people like that. That's why I said I couldn't begin to. Well, I could. We would literally be doing a 24-hour podcast if I gave you a list of all the stories of people that have helped and how they've helped. And I think the two reasons why is because one is people could see he was actually pretty good. And we both know that that's not just me talking as his dad. That's just he is pretty good. You don't win a British Touring Car Championship in history.
No, you don't make a move out on the outside of Surtees in the wet on your championship rival.
Yeah, that's a big boys move, isn't it?
That's what I saw. I was like, oh, that's brave. And fair play to Ingram for not running him up.
Do you know what?
I
was just about to say that we spoke afterwards. I said, fair play to Tom, because if I was Tom, I'd have adored you. And he went, yeah, I'd have done it as well.
It shows the mutual respect between them. I mean,
they've raced against each other since the very beginning. They did a couple of kart races.
It was hard on him, like literally just gave him a car width. That was it.
Gave him just enough, and the rules obviously are much tighter.
Are you watching Max Verstappen? Are you fucking watching?
Yeah. You can actually race hard and fair.
Sorry, I shouldn't have sworn that.
While we're talking about that, it's just frustrating, isn't it? Because the guy's so good.
Yeah.
The guy's so good.
Yeah.
But he's got this. And
but the current rules are allowing him to do it, though.
They also that it seems like he's so clever at being able to drive in such a way that allows him to get away with stuff. And then when the others seem to do it, they frankly don't do it as well as him.
No,
No.
But if you're going to shaft someone, shaft them properly.
The interesting thing is, let's go back to 2021. Probably the greatest year in recent memory of sheer anyone can win the championship. They went into the last round tied on points, that kind of stuff. Hamilton was the only one would actually properly go, no, you're not going to drive like that against me. And they shunted with each other.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to do something like that.
That was properly like Lewis going, no, bollocks to you. Race me. I'm not going to back off.
Yeah, especially at the British Grand Prix. Yeah, I'm going to keep my foot in. I'm not lifting. I'm not lifting into cops, I think.
I was doing some work for FOM Team Radio. And I was one of the team on the British Grand Prix that race. And we had access, that was a year, if you remember famously, they had access to the team managers and to Michael Massey.
Yeah.
And that was possibly radio gold of all radio gold.
Yeah.
And we're listening to it and we're going, this is fucking brilliant.
Have you seen the Michael Knight one? The one with you should get on Google and see that. Michael Knight is in Knight Rider, and it's got Toto Wolff coming over the top of the voiceover. It's really funny. It's just you should Google it. It's really funny.
But yeah, so that was just like the Jonathan Wheatley and Ron Meadows just going at Massey, and then Massey just basically like, I sent you an email. I don't actually have time to read my emails during the race. It was just brilliant. But that race, that year was just insane, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the Monza, then they shunted into each other as well. And Saudi, they shunted into each other again. It's fucking brilliant to watch as fans. I'm unashamedly a Lewis Hamilton fan. I don't mind admitting it. I have been since he started in Formula Renault. I commentated. The first race I ever commentated on, he won actually.
Oh, really?
Formula Renault in 2003. And partly for that reason, and just generally, I've just always been a Lewis fan.
I have. I've been slightly challenged by his politics in the last few years, and I'd always support the Brit. It's an obvious one. And ever since I watched him from karting days. When I was doing seniors, he was doing juniors, and he stood out. And there's one driver that my mum's got on a bedroom wall, and that's a signed picture of Lewis Hamilton. Yeah.
I just think that this year, the whole start, the PR gold that they've done with the photos of him in front of Enzo's house in his suit, looking so cool.
I hope he gets dressed like that. I'd rather see him dressed like like a mafia boss than like Coco the Clown when he comes to race me.
I always remember there was a Nigel Roebuck, he was my favourite journalist when he used to write his fifth column.
He was
brilliant. Talking about Mansell in his early days. He said, always used to look like he got dressed in the dark. It was a great description of he just put on all this random clothes, and that's sometimes you look at Lewis, you go, that's bold. But you got to give it to him. At least he's got some bollocks to actually. Yeah,
he has. He has. Yeah,
and he can carry it off. He's a dude, isn't he? Let's be honest. But going back to the Verstappen thing, I find it really hard because I think all of us, we have certain drivers that you warm towards on a human level, and there's times when he comes across as a really nice, funny kid, and especially like when in his early days when he was Ricciardo's teammate, Ricciardo always gets the best out of people around him. He seems to make them lighten up, a bit like Berger used to with Senna and that. Again, I find it really difficult to dislike individual drivers. I just can't. It's just not in my nature because I've got so much respect. I know, having raced myself, how special every single one of them are. Even the guy running around in a worse car at the back of the grid is a megastar by a normal comparison.
Yeah.
But when you get the rarefied atmosphere of the super megas that we've all seen over the years, the Sennas and the Prosts and the Schumachers and the Hamiltons, these guys, you want them. You almost want them to. You want them to be at their best all the time. There's something about the kind of. If you're that good, that's what I need to see you like all the time. And sometimes you see all of them do it. Mate, they're human. They either make a mistake or misjudgment. But the thing with Max and his racing style, there's times when you go, it just feels like you don't need to do it.
Yeah,
like Senna didn't need to do it. Like Schumacher didn't need to do it. They're all flawed geniuses in that respect. That's why all three of those drivers, I adored all three of them in different ways, but I never loved them emotionally. I liked them. I loved them as racing drivers, but not as people.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
the
yeah.
other way around. I don't know whichever way you put it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Whereas, like, say, Villeneuve, I just adored period. And
Yeah.
Adored period, you know. Mansell, adored period.
Yeah, I
Even
love
though
Mansell.
when you see the interviews and some of the, you know, he comes
Yeah,
across
but in the car, he was absolutely, as Frank Williams said, he was electric.
Yeah.
And he was electric.
My favourite Mansell story is about when he was dominating the championship in '92, and in qualifying, he was on pole by a country mile, and then his teammate had a problem with his car, Tracy. Of course, the days of spare cars, and there was a really short amount of time to go, and Tracy needed to jump in and do a represent. I don't think he'd really done much of a time at that point. He jumps in. Mansell famously had a slightly smaller steering wheel.
Yeah.
And Tracy literally did like an outlap and he said, I can't drive it.
Yeah.
He had to change the wheel. He went out and managed to do it. And he just came back in and he literally put his hand down there and grabbed his balls. I mean,
Yes.
just needed to feel how big they are. And that's the thing with Mansell. He's like, he was electric. He was, you know,
So ballsy.
I mean, you literally watch some of the stuff that he did in a racing car, and that thing was dancing. His car control and his feel for grip was insane.
Well, his commitment as well. Just absolute.
And also, let's put it into context. You go to Indy cars and you go out and win the championship and winning on ovals in your first year. You know, I've talked to Mark Blundell about that, 'cause Mark obviously raced on ovals in those cars, and he said on super speedway, like 220 miles an hour, he said there's nothing he will ever do that will ever be as frightening as driving an Indy car on an oval at the limit, you know. And so Mansell do it as well as he did.
Sitting next to a customer driving, a Billy driving around Rockingham Speedway in a Seat Cupra in the wet.
Yeah.
That's
pretty scary. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So you imagine that at twice that speed, you're like up against it. Did
Oh
you ever
my
go
God.
to the IndyCar races at Rockingham?
I went to the. Funnily enough, I was stood next to Rob Murphy on the free practice. I didn't actually go for the race.
Yeah.
Did you go to the race?
I went to both of them. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, I went to
220 odd miles an hour.
The first one was such a good race. It was De Ferran and Kenny Brack on the last lap, side by side through the last corner.
Really?
I can't remember who won it. I think it was Kenny Brack who actually won it. I can't remember
Right.
now. And then the following year, Dario win it. I think Dario might have won it the following year.
Right.
But I remember getting shown around the garages by Darren Manning, because I was quite good mates with Darren Manning.
Yeah.
He had a
Mouse. Yeah.
St George's Cross livery on his
Yeah.
car.
Yeah.
Good, very good driver, Darren Manning.
Yeah.
Got to know him a lot through the A1 GP.
I'm going to hunt him down. I'm going to hunt him down.
Yeah.
Find out what's happened to Mouse. What's happened to the mouse?
Yeah, he's a good lad, Darren. But so it's going back to, I mean, that day. Well, here's a little link with Mansell. That the championship winning day was the 6th of October, which is the day that Nigel Mansell won his first Grand Prix at Brands Hatch in the European Grand Prix in '85.
Really?
Yeah,
No
'Cause I was
way.
at that race as well.
No way. And there you are, years later,
Yeah, we're
with your son. Just won the. I would say it's the most prestigious championship in the UK. I would say.
in the UK. I think it's interesting because you're outside of the country. Probably like not a lot of people would know what it is. In the same way, probably if you're not a NASCAR fan, you wouldn't know who was winning NASCAR or who was winning Australian supercars.
Yeah.
But in their respective fields, if you're in the States or in Australia, you're like, wow, it's a big deal. Interestingly, on that subject, Jake's been invited down to the Adelaide Motorsport Historic Festival in March to drive the 1970 Can-Am Shadow that he demoed at Goodwood this year.
Nice.
So it's the Shadow Mark 1 with 840 horsepower V8 Chevy that weighs 810 kilos, and the front rear is so low that your feet are splayed out like a penguin, because that's the only way you can drive it, because the pedals. The foot box is like that.
Right.
And he was actually asked before he drove it if his feet were, what size feet he had, because if they were more than a size 8, he wouldn't have been able to drive it.
Wow.
But when he goes down there and drives that, he's also been asked to drive one of the current generation Australian supercars.
No way.
So he's driving
That'd be wicked.
V8.
If he can drive an R32 Skyline,
yeah.
he's going to have no problem with that at all.
Well, interesting that he's sharing the car on the same time with Craig Baird. He's obviously a multiple, champion down there.
I've heard of him, at least, yeah.
And I don't for a minute think that they're going to go, oh my God, we need to give him a drive. But it just suddenly means that they will be aware of him. They'll know a bit more about him.
Yeah.
And, motorsport's a very small world now, isn't it? And one of the things that's on, I think it's next weekend or possibly this weekend, is the Bathurst 12 Hours GT3 race.
Right.
And that's definitely on the radar of something that's doable. You know,
Yeah.
with his first GT3 races he's just done in Dubai and
Yeah.
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, he's sprouting his wings.
It was exciting, really exciting. But so it's been I describe it as a long, winding, and sometimes very bumpy road. But somehow we've managed. The interesting thing, just going back to the link with my own racing, is, you know, I tried so hard for so long to make a go of my own racing, and I did okay. I got so far with, going on no money. It was just been finding money and finding sponsors. I found 2 really big sponsors in that time. I worked out the other day that since Jake started racing to now, I've managed to raise £1.34 million.
Really?
In that time. So that was just oversaying. But let's not forget that without a lot of people, and more recently, since 2020, MB, Mark Blundell and Alex Watts and Theo Pafitis and the guys there's no way that Jake would have been British Touring Car Champ without them supporting him, believing in him as well. And obviously the commercial packages they put together got him into the BMW, and now he's obviously, in my opinion, the best team on the grid.
Yeah.
That's what given him a chance. So.
It's all the background support. I suppose that's one of the things this podcast is about. Is it's not just about the superstars. It's about like the background people. It's the people that build up to it.
Like me.
Well, I mean, we've just gone through the fact that you're very much not that.
Well,
You know
what I mean. It's just, at the end of the day, like anyone who's a parent, you do whatever you can for your kids. I'm the same with my daughter. I do whatever I can to support her and help her. But when you've got when you see that the opportunity that there's enough talent there, and you only get one shot at it. And I had to give it everything I got. I would have never been able to live with myself if I didn't do everything I could to try and give him a chance. But the key thing with that, and it's interesting somebody else pointed this out, is that you can work your socks off, your arse off, whatever you want to say, get him into the car. There you go then. I've done my bit. Now it's down to you.
Yeah.
You've still got to deliver.
Yeah.
It's the man in the arena, as the famous poem goes, with the bloody dirt on his face, or blood on his face, whatever it is, that's fighting the fight. And that's what I could work my absolute arse off and get him every bit of sponsorship on the sun. Still got to drive the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still got to go around the outside of his biggest championship rival in the rain.
Yeah.
With everything at stake.
Yeah.
That's still got to be like the racer's instinct has got to be there.
Yeah.
That sort of, there's I heard on your previous podcast with Kevin Ferber, he was talking about a quote from Michael Verge. He said there's drivers of racing cars and racing drivers. And it's true, there are, aren't there? We all know. We talked about the James Rhodes of this world, and Johnny Robinson's another one that springs to mind. Brilliant racing drivers, but never quite got the opportunities to do what they needed. They could have done with their ability. And then we've also worked with guys who are good racing drivers, but not great racing drivers.
Yeah,
just decent, And the other one I absolutely love is a Roger Penske quote, and he was talking about Paul Tracy, when Paul Tracy was driving for him in Indy cars. And I think it was in the first year he was in the Marlboro Penske, and he was always either on pole or right at the front. And then
he was a local lad. Wasn't his mum? His mum was from Kent or something. Paul Tracy.
Paul Tracy.
Possibly. Yeah. His mum was from I'm sure from Brands sort of area, London direction.
Didn't know that. That's an interesting little anorak.
Sorry,
that's fine.
Yeah.
But basically, the interviewer said, like, he must be frustrated. Paul's very, very quick, but can't seem to execute. He's either spinning off or doing something dull. And he just said, well, you can tidy up speed, but you can't speed up tidiness. That's one of the greatest motor racing. And I apply that. I always look at, when I relate that to my racing and Jake's racing, he started off being, you'd rather have someone that's brave and a bit leery and just tidy it up. Yeah,
always love working with drivers that are leery.
Calm the fuck down. So, like I said about the Fluxy story. So just for benefit of, I don't think we mentioned it on the
let's do that one.
So the very first time Jake got to test a Ginetta Junior was at Mallory Park on a Wednesday morning, and off he went in his little red Ginetta Junior, and he was all over the place. He was super committed, sideways, like just spinning, just doing all that kind of, didn't shunt, but just like on the limit and over the limit a bit. And Ian Flux, who affectionately known as Fluxy, who is a good friend of yours and mine, is one of the greatest national racing heroes that we've all got. Read his book for Flux's sake if you haven't done so, folks. He came wandering over with a fag on, as he does. It's his exact words were, "Fuck me, Si, who's the kid in the red car?" And I was like, "That's my lad." He went, "Well, Si, he's either going to be on pole or in hospital if he keeps driving like that." and I was like, "Well, yeah." And he actually did get pretty close to the lap record in his first go, genuinely. Because Mike, who was running, Mike from Tollboy, said, I always remember he walked across the pit lane and went, "You got a problem." I went, "What's that?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And he went, "There you go." And he showed me the time. It was like a 10th off the lap record. About his 6th lap.
Your kid is really fast. Oh, shit.
Yeah, it was.
Now you've got a problem.
But it was the weirdest feeling of, back to saying, what do you feel? You just feel just immense, like, shoulders back. Oh, thank God for that. I'm glad if he's going to do it, I want him to be good at it. Let's be honest. Because, again, going back to the amount of time and effort that we put into trying to make it happen, I don't think I could. In fact, I know I couldn't have done it if I didn't genuinely believe he was good enough.
Yeah.
If I thought he was just good, but not really good, then I think I would have got to a point and go, there's going to be a point where he'll plateau.
Yeah.
And I still think he's, to quote Lewis Hamilton, still our rise. He's still getting better.
He's still on
improving. And, there's a lot still. There's a lot of the journey still to have in touring cars and outside of touring cars and sports cars. There's all sorts of historic racing that he's loving doing. Some of the stuff he's got to drive. I mean, he drove the Leighton house in Dubai last year.
No way.
The 87, the original car, not the Adrian Hill one.
Oh, really? Oh, right. Okay.
And he also drove a 73 Ensign, the first ever Ensign, which was pretty cool. Raced it. His first ever single-seater race was in an F1 car in Dubai, because he wasn't supposed to be there racing.
First ever championship we won is the British Touring Car Championship. First ever single-seater was an F1 car. Amazing.
Don't muck about, does he? So, but that came about because he was out in Dubai racing a Lotus 26R Elan, a 60s car, with a lovely guy called Colin Sauter. And whilst he was out there, John Danby Racing were running these historic F1 cars. And the guy that was supposed to drive it, a guy called Ron Maiden, who ran Masters Historic up until recently, jumped in it, and he's like, "Can't really fit." He's quite a big old boy, Ron. I don't think he'll mind me saying he's quite stocky, and he just didn't fit. So they literally went, "Right, Jane, jump in."
You're in that one
you're
then.
Like 68 kilos or whatever you are. And that's how we got an F1 drive and finished 4th on his first ever F1 race.
Amazing.
Which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
As you can no doubt tell, it's just the proudest feeling ever. I'm so proud of both my kids. But as a former driver myself, to see him do what he's done, it's just...
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, so that's probably the only thing I've got in common with Jos Verstappen, is we're both massively proud of our kids, and they're infinitely better than they were. But I haven't beaten anyone up, so that's the other difference. Allegedly.
I think we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
Si, thanks very much for coming in. It's really appreciate coming up. It's great, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been great fun.
Thank you, man.
Cheers, Donny.
Why'd you say